Gilich, good morning. How are things?
Yeah, pretty good. And also Colin.
Ger and Shane. Simply the best, better than all the rest.
Oh,
that was really sad, wasn't it?
Yeah. What was your first? I
thought she was already dead.
Oh no.
Number one.
I mean, somebody like Tina Turner, you're going to know when they die.
I thought she was. I thought she had gone, and then I realised, I couldn't believe she was that old. I couldn't believe she had been around for that long.
So you both couldn't believe that she wasn't already dead, and you couldn't believe how old she was.
No. Somebody like Tina Turner, when they die, you're going to know.
Yeah.
It.
Well, I got an immediate push notification.
Yeah,
immediately.
Exactly. You can't think, I thought you were dead already. That's terrible.
I thought she had gone about a decade ago.
What?
But I still be singing her songs, like paying tribute to her every day, unofficially.
I do think for people of a certain age, though, it kind of got ruined a little bit by David Brent. My first reaction was David Brent doing the dance at the top of the class, going
to which song?
He does Simply the Best.
I forgot he used that song.
Dances in,
and then he comes back in. Don't turn it off.
What's Love got to do with it? Is a better song anyway. My own personal opinion.
She's big at weddings. Her songs.
Yeah.
Played it all the time. I associate her with the 90s growing up. She was constantly on the radio.
She was
constantly on the car radio, like the most played artist from my childhood.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
every time. Maybe it was a Cork thing, but every time I was in the car, Tina was singing to me.
Right.
Listening to our friends in Red FM, which I don't think existed in the 90s, did it?
It didn't. No, the other station.
Well,
yeah.
Shall remain nameless.
Yeah, exactly.
Proud Mary is the song, I'm told.
Proud Mary is not her song, right? But her cover is the most famous.
Is it?
Jojo's nodding along here.
Okay. Well, share your Tina memories in the comments. I do have a proposal, right? So next week, there's not that much on midweek. There's loads of bits and pieces, and we'll obviously cover whatever happens in the
Europa League final.
Yeah, exactly. But there's. How about we dedicate either next Monday or next Tuesday to a Succession finale?
Oh.
Because I've got a confession to make here, right? I watched 0 minutes of the game last night because I've been travelling during the week and we had to catch up. And last night's episode, Monday's episode, was like an hour and 20 minutes. Next week is an hour and 47 minutes. I've already checked.
Yeah.
So is the football good? I don't know.
I did both.
Let's say, fair play to you. You must have got it in early. We had to put the kids to bed, and then it's like, I mean, I can do my job here, or I can watch Succession. So look, I'm sorry, everybody. I realise grossly unprofessional, but come on, I saw the teams. Ferguson wasn't starting.
You should have watched it.
Pep didn't even take it as seriously as I did.
I have some catching up to do. I watched episode 2 of the final season last night.
Well, then you're out next week.
But no, don't worry. I can do that.
I'm well up to speed.
Well, sorry. We have to. This is a democracy. The viewers have to decide what they want. You can tune in. You can not tune in if you're not behind. But we're giving you plenty of notice. A full week to catch up, buddies.
Why are you suggesting Monday or Wednesday? Well, what's happening Tuesday?
I said Tuesday or Wednesday.
You said Monday or Wednesday.
Can't be Monday.
Exactly. Can't be Monday.
Well, I said Tuesday or Wednesday.
You said Monday or Wednesday.
Oh, just stop.
Wow.
Anyway, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it.
Kids. This is amazing. It happens surprisingly a lot.
You said Monday win. These are like children.
Anywho, what do you think, folks? Tell us yes or no, and give us some reasons.
As in, dedicate the entire show to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're
going to need some guests.
We won't. We won't.
I'm happy to do that, yeah. But I guess we'd have to get a constantly spoiler alert up on the YouTube comments and across our social, so people can tune out if they want. Because a lot of people want to have seen this.
We're going to get slaughtered. We're going to get slaughtered.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're given advance notice, and everybody's given the opportunity. But this will be the first place we get the opportunity to do it, and we have to decide if it,
Spectre Core's ruled out. She's only on episode 5 of the last season.
You'll catch up in the meeting.
I guarantee I'll catch up. How many episodes are there? There's 9 out. So this weekend is 10.
10th, yeah.
That's easily catch upable, if it's a word, which it isn't. But I can do it.
Right. Okay, let's move on. Here's what's coming up on the show today. There will be no talk. We're banning talk. Vinny Perth's going to join us in studio at 8 o'clock. We're talking with Jen Hogan and Paraic McDonald about the GAA issuing a letter to remind everybody about their rules about non-competitive up to under 12. We've got Liam Griffin talking about Apocalypse Now for Wexford Hurling. Andy Mitten is going to do his You Had to Be There. Very interesting choices, and some football show goodness to play us out.
Slaney sliders, you could say, about Wexford.
Hey.
I just thought of that there now.
Did you just think of that there?
Legitimately just there now.
Right.
So it's probably better out there. Let us know.
I don't believe him. I think Working on that for weeks.
Yellow bellies.
We'll need a new vision mixer for this Succession talk.
Oh, why?
Because Emma has said no spoilers. You'll need to get a replacement.
Next week. What season are you on?
I think this is Emma now.
Yeah.
I think Emma has waited for. She's typing here, but I think she's waited to watch all of season 4 when it's done.
Now's the time. You can catch up.
Watching.
You can catch up because it's done next week. By the time you get to the final episode, it'll be done.
Where does it rank for you in all time?
Have to wait and see what happens.
Sure, yeah,
it's not over.
Sure,
it's too early to say.
Yeah, like you need a Breaking Bad sort of ending, where everything is literally chef's kiss. Just to really complete it.
I think Breaking Bad fell apart a little bit in the last episode.
Ger.
I think the same of
Controversial.
Became a little bit
ready for it to be done now.
Breaking Bad's finale is all-time great finale stuff.
Is it? I mean,
people, please let him know in the comments.
I haven't watched it back. You're
gonna have to watch it
I had
again.
no instinct to watch it back afterwards. It was very good over a long period of time, but I think it kind of fell apart a little bit at the end.
Yeah, I think Succession has run its course now. I'm just waiting for the ending, because at this stage now, I'm not giving anything away.
No,
By what I'm about to say, but I don't care who comes out on top.
Okay, that's enough. I mean, that's a spoiler.
It's not a spoiler at all.
It is.
I mean, it's the whole premise of the whole show.
It's a spoiler.
Is Succession. Who is going to succeed? But look, the actual match last night was a lot better than I envisioned.
You said it was great.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
Yeah,
it was
okay.
end to end.
Very good.
Last day of school feeling.
Pep doesn't know what he's doing though. He picked some players, took a big risk.
No, it was really good. And Cecil's goal in the second half.
Tell us about Evan Ferguson first, because that's the
Well, he didn't start, as you said.
Yeah.
Came on in the 52nd minute for Cecil, who was quite happy to come off after that goal. It's like, not going to get better than that. And then 3 minutes later, nearly scored. Ferguson had a snapshot with his right foot, which keeper saved at the near post, and was generally very good throughout, like hold up play. Just did nothing special, as often is the case with Ferguson. He doesn't wow you with his silky play or anything, but he's just very, very good at what he does. And his back to goal play was very solid. Every time he picked up the ball with his back to goal, he found a teammate. He actually wasn't so good at that when he came on against Newcastle last time, but much better this time around. Disappointing that he didn't start, but yeah, he was very good when he came on. But overall, it was just an excellent Brighton display, and it's their best ever season. Last season they finished 9th, which was an all-timer for them. It's better again this time around, and with that results, the 1 point gained, they've qualified for next season's Europa League with a game to spare. What a job Roberto De Zerbi's done.
Yeah, pretty good.
And also, look, it's everybody in Ireland's unofficial second team, or most people's anyway, because of Ferguson. But while we're watching him, we're watching all his teammates and so many likeable, brilliant young players, mostly in Cecil.
And Tony Bloom as well is quite likeable himself, and De Zerbi having a little moment.
His PR has gone through the roof in 2023. He was in Cheltenham as well. He was prominent there. He did very well at Cheltenham, and you're seeing him more and more on camera.
And Cecil, a teenager as well.
Yeah, extremely young.
19, I think. Yeah.
What a goal! And there was that sight of the Manchester City supporter behind the goal, applauding before it went in. The goal.
Oof.
Yeah,
it's one of the. It's the goal of the season, isn't it?
Well, I forgot about the Chelsea goal, which has popped up, where it's basically from the same distance, and it's in the other corner.
As my housemate said, you could have had 2 goalkeepers in goal and they still wouldn't have stopped it. But that's the definition of a goal of the season contender. It has to have had.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, usually because I shot from distance.
Sorry, I've only seen the angle from the side where you can actually see the full distance. It is fully 30 yards.
Yeah.
Probably
And
the distance to the goal is further, because it's kind of
the slow-mo from his point of view is the great angle of the fans. I actually do love that when because all the fans behind the goal were Man City, so obviously it was pretty much still people when they went in. And you can see the smattering of applause throughout, which I love that. When a goal is so good that fans just can't help themselves.
Yeah, I think because they've already won the league, they're happy to be,
totally. I mean, I was thinking that exact thing when the fan is applauding. He was like, he's nothing to lose here. But like some of the great goals in history for me stand out because the opposition fans can't help themselves and appreciate it. Like Matt Letizia at Ewood Park, when he goes around a few players and puts it in over Tim Flowers, hits the towel.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever clapped an opposition?
A lot of applauding behind the goal from the Blackburn fans. What?
Have you ever done that, like clapped an opposition moment or player or I think a lot of Tyrone fans around me clapped Conor McManus's point that time from the sideline. That outrageous point.
Right.
1 or 2.
That's not like them, in fairness.
No, it's not.
I was at the Manchester Derby 2003 with my father, and United won 3-1. Sean Wright-Phillips scored for Man City, a screamer from distance. and Billy Boogie jumped up.
Did he?
Among the United fans.
Right. What a goal.
Yeah.
Brazilian Ronaldo was clapped at Old Trafford, I think, by the United fans that time.
He thought they were mocking him as well. He didn't reciprocate because he thought that he was a bit of a joke figure at that stage. I've played in games where the opposition has scored, and I thought to myself, geez, what I thought you were going to say, and been clapped. What a goal that was, but you avoid the physical applauding of it. You get taken off yourself. But no, it was up there with one of the better strikes of the season, and also not too surprising because, like you said already, the Chelsea goal at Stamford Bridge, he has that in him. But they're just littered with quality throughout, and Mitoma is one of the players of the season. And actually, Ferguson spoke glowingly about Mitoma.
They can keep those three, obviously, and they've got the new signing coming in, who's again very young, and all of a sudden they're going to be one of the most exciting young teams. Now, you need some steel, and you need, like, for the hard road that they have, maybe the Derby has enough steel, and the other signings they make with whatever money they have and available transfer spend.
You'd expect them to.
Yeah.
They certainly make good signings. Alexis McAllister very much looked like a man waving goodbye last night. Looks like that deal is essentially done to Liverpool, but it's all up. Freed from Desire comes on last night. Sweet Caroline comes on last night, and they're all feeling themselves. And why wouldn't they be? Pep was a little bit feisty during the match at one point. The Haaland goal that was not disallowed by VAR, and rightly so. I mean, Haaland just fouls the defender completely. But Pep gets his yellow card for manhandling.
Did he get a yellow card?
Get a yellow card, yeah.
Right.
He kind of grabs the linesman and pushes him out of his way.
Can't be doing that now, Pep.
No. And then he started to say sorry, but as the referee was walking away after him saying sorry, he started saying more to the referee. It was just like, he's asking to be sent off here. But as you say, he's probably just trying to feel more alive.
Would that ban have made him... wouldn't have applied to... FA Cup final, would it?
Ooh,
not sure.
Good question. 2 yellows maybe wouldn't be the same as a red.
What actually got last night too was Danny Welbeck hitting the bar with a superb free kick just before Phil Foden opened the scoring for City.
Do City play their big guns at Brentford in the last game?
Yeah, depends on what the sports science says about their conditioning, right? Like,
Kolo Touré was on the punditry last night. He said they should go all out. These lads need to be kept fresh and consistently playing.
Well, I don't know if you remember the Champions League final between Spurs and Liverpool. Was such a terrible game because nobody played any football for about 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, that was unfair. Yeah,
and I
think it was 3 weeks. It was longer.
Was it?
Yeah, it was really.
And obviously Harry Kane was unfit, so that was his problem. But
sorry, go on.
Colm surely wanted Chelsea win tonight for a bit more excitement on the final day on Sunday. Says Kenny that he does. He said that earlier.
Yeah, well, if United get a point tonight, they secure Champions League football, and that's that done for the last day of the season. So then the only thing to play for, and it's very significant, is 2 of the 3 relegation places, which is class actually, that it's gone down to that. And all 3 teams involved, Everton, Leicester and Leeds, are all at home in the last day. But yeah, I wouldn't mind, like, a Chelsea win at Old Trafford. They always seem to play each other at this time of year at Old Trafford, United Chelsea. If they win, I think it's extremely unlikely.
Is Mason Mount worth 60 million?
No, I don't think so.
And are you delighted that you're, as Manchester United fans here, that Mason Mount is like the prized assets that the best clubs in Europe are fighting over? Or because it feels a little bit like the Mason Mount hype was wrong, and that
but in today's market,
his moment has passed.
He's worth 60 million in today's market.
Is he good enough to play for Manchester United's first team?
Yeah, he is. That definitely. Yeah, I would say yes, but I wouldn't be too excited about
Eriksen.
Probably instead of Eriksen. Eriksen can only last an hour in games at the moment.
No, I mean the first 11 is fluid, like so many games in the season, so you can come in and out, play 3 quarters, start 3 quarters of the game.
But the big games. So when
it depends on the opposition, but definitely, yeah, you could play him in a 3 in midfield, or you can play him out wide in one of the 2 roles behind the striker. He's pretty flexible. That's the thing about Mount. I think he's a bit of a manager's dream.
Well, that's all we keep getting told, because he did what Frank Lampard told him to do, and then he played for England for a while and they weren't very good, and then he came out of the team and they got better. Same
with Thomas Tuchel. He did what Tuchel wanted to do, would be tactically fairly advanced, and I think the big plus point about Mount is he understands exactly what managers want from him, which isn't the case for a lot of players. So that's why he plays so much, and the reason he's not in the team so much this season, he's had in this contract dispute. I would take him at United, but I wouldn't be too excited.
He's not in the team this season because they can't find room for him. It's not because of the contract dispute.
That's one of the reasons.
It's not, though. Why would you not play a player who you're paying because he hasn't signed a new deal for the year after next? What's the reason to stop you playing him?
Well, they have so many players that they could just pick someone else.
Yeah, so they don't think he's good enough. Are you
going to sign or not? Yeah, I look, that's even when he was central to everything Chelsea were doing, and England as well, I always thought he was good, like very good player. very neat and tidy.
But is it not mad that he's
involved? But I didn't think he was brilliant ever.
Like, he's become, everybody wants him. It makes him mad. Everybody wants him. I'm like, do they really? Is that not like, are you not spending massive amount of money and massive amount of wages because you spend a massive amount of money because he's English, and actually he's grand. Mason Mount is grand.
I put him above grand.
Yeah.
Okay, but like, he's not in the Chelsea team, who are not in the top 10 in the league at the moment. He can't nail down a place against like several other players.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I would take him without being too excited about it. You know, that would be the category he'd fall into.
So
and also in like the modern game, so many games a season.
I get so many games.
He's a good player to have. He's like he's in your first 14, if you like. You know, he's going to start a lot of games. Or if he's on the bench, you bring him on. Like an upgrade on Marcel Sabitzer. You know, that would be kind of where you put him. And also, you kind of forget a bit about him because he really hasn't played an awful lot. And if we had this conversation maybe 2 years ago, you'd be a bit more excited because he was playing. And he's the type of player who can contribute maybe 10 goals a season in all competitions and 15 assists. So he's racking up.
Well, that's quite high.
He might be like a 10 to 12 point player a season. So then you say £60 million for that, and that 10 to 12 points gets you in a higher European competition or a higher Premier League place. It's worth the investment.
So basically,
nothing to get massively excited about.
Jadon Sancho should have been.
I was just going to bring up Sancho.
Sancho was way higher expectations because of the fee. That's higher again.
Well, I think
also he was seen as a game changer.
Well, if you got 10 goals a season out of Sancho and 15 assists, that's a lot. I think you're overrating Mason Mount here.
I'm saying in all competitions now, not just the Premier League.
I think the expectations for Mount will be fairly low considering he is English.
Like 60 million.
The hype should be much higher because he's English, but it's not actually that high because
I thought you were joking there.
No, genuinely, there's a lot more hype about other English players. Declan Rice has a lot more hype on his shoulders than Mason Mount, for example. I really don't rate Declan Rice as much as a lot of people do.
Well, he's able to impact games more, I would say, than Mason Mount, and so at least you understand you're buying him to play a very specific role. You're paying twice what he's probably worth. But if you were getting Declan Rice for 60 million and he was going to play every game as one of your holding midfielders, game in, week out, and do what he does, I'd be happy enough with that. But I just think Mason Mount is a bit of smoke and mirrors at this stage, and the fact that everybody wants him, I don't know, it's a bit reluctant to I don't know. Let's wait and see where he goes and let's see what the money is. But it seems like perhaps Chelsea are issuing he's definitely going to be 60 million, lads. And then they're like, yeah, what are you going to do?
Well, Old Trafford seems to be his personal preference, and I think the likes of Liverpool and the other teams sniffing around are aware of that, whether United want him or not. United fans trust Ten Hag with his signings.
I don't think there's as much hype because he's a systems player. He doesn't stand out or have like one definable quality like a Declan Rice or James Maddison does, because he does a bit of everything for you.
I'd be much more excited
like a technical James Milner.
Liverpool fans should be more excited by Alexis McAllister, for example. Like, that's an easy signing to get excited about. Mount is definitely more of a question mark.
I just think it's a bit when we keep getting told about how resources are scant at Manchester United and they keep overspending for players. You're like, well, I mean, you know, at some point, they don't have the opportunity to spend because they've wasted it all.
Well, that's one of the rumours as to why the Mount deal might not happen to United, because there's a bit of uncertainty about the sale of the club, and United don't really want to be signing anyone at the moment for obvious reasons until that sale is either happening or further down the line.
The other thing that Jacob Steinberg's writing about this today about Harry Kane, there's a line in it about Erik ten Hag being obsessed with Harry Kane. I'm always a little bit concerned about that too. Like you're like, we're going to get this one player and he's the only thing that we can do. And we're going to spend it whatever it is you want. Mr. Levy, take all my money. And now Harry Kane is obviously going to be worth, probably, more than likely, he will fulfill your expectations. He'll score 29 league goals and 10 other goals in other games. And in the Champions League, you need somebody like Harry Kane. So I can see at this stage, even at 29, when I don't know when his birthday is, but I can see why it's you pay the money for him, and that's grand. And if you use some of your money to get Mason Mount that prevents you from getting Harry Kane, then I'm like, well, that doesn't really make any sense.
I understand the obsession. Like, Kane's had one of his best seasons ever, and Spurs have been a disaster.
Yeah.
He scored 28 goals.
Yeah.
If he's not going to leave now, he's never going to leave.
His motivation to continue doing it, in fairness to him, is pretty impressive. Like, he's to play with this rabble around him. Everything about the club is a disaster except him.
It does feel like he could go to 34, 35 still scoring loads of goals.
Yeah.
That actually there's nothing in his game.
He's super lean, fit. If he avoids the ankle injury, that he has that problem with his right ankle.
Yeah.
Other than that, like, I understand completely the obsession. A world-class striker,
But being
it's always been rare.
fixated on one thing means that you can't get value or can't see opportunities elsewhere, and it's not a good idea.
Or else you're very focused on what you want.
Well, he was very focused on Anthony, and they overpaid for it. Like, there are other players who could have delivered what Anthony delivered. Anthony still obviously has potential to continue to grow and is getting better. And I'm not saying it was a bad signing, but they paid too much money for it.
Oh, they did at the time for sure, but like 3 years into his Manchester United career, people said Cristiano Ronaldo was a waste of money. From 2003 to 6, he didn't really do very much, and that was £12.5 million back then, which was a fair bit of money. And then the last 3 years was like, oh, okay, that was all worth it. I'm not comparing Anthony to Ronaldo directly. I'm saying you can get value for money over time. He's young. If Ten Hag stays around, Ten Hag loves him.
Okay. I mean, I think that they're completely different situations. And you're adding a player into an already winning culture, and so therefore it didn't really matter if it mattered less if it was successful or otherwise.
That period, 3 to 6 for United, was very much transitional.
But before that, like, everybody had credit in the bank, in the group, and you knew you had the bones of a team who were capable of winning because they had one. Whether or not that period of time was transitional or not, it was still a winning culture in a club with a manager who knew what it took to win. At the moment, we don't know if they have anything like that in England, and obviously the amount of money in the game and the speed at which rivals can catch you has massively moved forward. So the requirement to sign really well is now higher than it's ever been, particularly for a club like Manchester United, who apparently don't have the power in the market that they used to, even though they've massively spent millions and millions and millions.
Of course they have the power. I mean, the attraction.
The money. They had the money. Yeah. They spent the money.
Yeah.
A draw tonight, and all of a sudden United is a far more attractive prospect.
So why would you go to United if you had the choice of going to City?
Maybe
it's very understandable.
Maybe you might want to play football. Maybe Manchester United pay more in wages. I mean, their goalkeeper seems to be getting paid more than the Manchester City goalkeeper. Which goalkeeper would you rather have?
Yeah, but look how much they're paying Erling Haaland and can pay. I think the difference there is that City can pay what they want. They just don't all the time.
Or maybe they do. We'll find out when the truth comes out with regards to the charges.
There's an interesting comment here by Shane Dunn. I think Evan Ferguson needs to leave Brighton. I can see next year being a big struggle with European football. Aston Villa would be a good fit.
Yeah, Aston Villa, great idea. I agree. Sorry. Yeah, I was like, this is nonsense. Great end. You saved it at the last minute. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Sell Ollie Watkins and replace him with Evan Ferguson. I am on board. Quid's in. We make a profit on that deal. Now,
Brian, I'm not suggesting 12 million was the same as 100 million. No.
Well, he was.
I'm just saying it was a lot of money.
All those. I'm not making this comparison. I'm just saying that they're in the ballpark.
I mean, the comparison.
It's a rhetorical flourish that we use from time to time when we are actually trying to compare, but we're just like floating the kite.
Apparently, our vibe is uncomfortable.
Flying the kite. Well, I mean, someone's picking up. Someone's got the radar. On fire.
I'm very comfortable with it. Aston Villa. Yeah, maybe.
Nah, listen.
Yeah, we would take him. I mean, I'm sure he'd get a game from time to time, wouldn't he?
He's not leaving Brighton. Why would he bother leaving Brighton?
It's nonsensical. This is about as smart as he's. He might play for England. Yeah, all right. The under-17s are playing Spain on Saturday in the European quarterfinals. If we win, we're through automatically to the World Cup. So there's a big game now. Spain have double-digit under-17 titles, I think.
Yeah.
Was it either it was 9 or 11? I apologies for getting the figure wrong, but you were making the point, Dan was making the point last night about the amount of 15-year-olds in our team. So we have a really, really, really young team. Spain do have the youngest player ever to play for Barcelona in their side.
I mean, it's not bad, is it?
No. Was he 14 and something? He's 15 and something anyway. And he scored a cracker in their game against Serbia. So anyway, look.
A lot of home-based players, a lot of excitement.
Yeah, is it 5 o'clock on Saturday?
I didn't see the kick-off time, but it's that's one that all of a sudden now we're all getting behind. Not that we're all following hype trends, but I mean, the 17s, when you see so many, it's like Will talking about Offaly yesterday, so many really, really young players in that Offaly under-20s panel, but this Irish under-17s panel, like, when you look at their average age, it's just remarkable. And I think there's one of them maybe playing for Crystal Palace. I was looking at the squad there of where each player is playing. So you have Matthew Murray playing over in Spain. You have Jake Garante playing for Crystal Palace. Jason Healy, the keeper, is with Southend United. A lot of them are with local teams, though, so it's remarkable that they've still been held on to. Melia, of course, and one of those players that I guess we've been talking about a lot in the show. Vinny Perth, big fan of him. 15 years of age and already playing League of Ireland regularly. So, yeah, imagine they got a result against Spain. But I feel like even the experience of playing Spain at this point is good.
I know, you've got to win these games. This is a tournament. 7 o'clock kickoff on Saturday evening. So 7 o'clock kickoff on Saturday evening, and it is live on the RTE News channel, so you get a chance to watch that.
Yeah, a lot to look forward to. Like the 17s, like it's a brilliant group of players, and the youths, as you were saying earlier, like the most number of 15-year-olds playing in that side, even more than the combined rest of the nations. Like, and you combine that with the lack of facilities in the country too, it's pretty remarkable. It's actually well worth listening back to Dan McDonald last night talking about this with Joe. The future's bright in many ways for Irish football. In other ways, it's so frustrating how far we are behind other European countries. You
mentioned we had Jen Hogan and Paraic McDonald coming up. I wondered if he had any views on the competitive nature of under 12 sport, generally speaking. I think I remember playing under 11 soccer that was certainly at a competitive level. Competitive, I mean, it was a league, there were points, we kept result of the scores. Gaelic's probably slightly different. We definitely played under 10 blitzes, where certainly scores were kept, and I never felt like it was a bad thing. You learn to lose, and you learn to win, and you learn to draw.
I think that's anyway. Go on, keep going.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I know these go games or whatever the GA call them, and that's why this story has made headlines in the last 24 hours or so, that the GA have come out and kind of reiterated that, you know, there can't be any competitiveness, and they're clamping down on any signs of competitiveness at under 12 level. But it is a bit remarkable and ridiculous. Anthony Moyles made a few very good points on Twitter yesterday that I agreed with largely.
I can't wait for Moyles to come back into the studio.
What are your views?
That this argument has been framed completely wrong. It's a gross misunderstanding of the whole point. Of course, games are competitive. Like, who is it that there's two flies? Anthony Nash is like, two flies going up. I'm competitive about it. Everybody's competitive about it. The kids are all competitive about it. They know when they win or lose the games, and they're keeping score themselves. But the whole point is that what you're trying to do is to get the most people play the most amount of sport for as long as possible. Not to have like a winning culture at the under 10s, who are killing. God, they're like absolute killers. And screw you, next club over, Shelbyville. You're a bunch of losers. And also, if you're not in the first team, screw you. You're not getting any game time. There are kids who are going to training and then who go to matches and don't play any minutes in the game because dickhead coach wants to win and take home we crushed the opposition.
Yeah, well, that's a separate problem, isn't it?
No, it's not a separate problem. It's the actual specific problem that they're addressing.
Well,
that's the whole point. That's the whole point of the Go Games, is that you don't have the competition, you don't keep a track record and stats and data because you can't trust coaches. You can't trust people not to get carried away with the desire to be, I'm Jose Mourinho on the sideline. And I have to say, I thought that was the kind of tone from a lot of people. Well, I'm okay. I'm great. I'm like, okay, grand you are, but like it turns out most people aren't.
Well, coaches should be forced to play players an equal amount. I know that's a very, very difficult thing to police, but was Phil saying yesterday, one of the lads in the office saying yesterday, there's someone he knows who's an accountant and literally keeps track on an Excel spreadsheet.
Fair play to him, because that's a lot of work. The alternative is that actually it doesn't really matter. All you're trying to do is to get the most players, the most amount of skill. It's actually about skill acquisition, and it's about touches, and it's about time spent having crack as opposed to feeling the pressure. This whole we learned to win and lose, it didn't do me any harm. The subs on your under 11 team playing soccer, are they all still playing soccer?
No.
I mean, the vast majority of people who are subs underage decide, actually, you know what, I'm going to go off and do something else. That's what happens, right?
I was a sub a lot on under 11s, under 12s. I was.
And what age were you?
11 or 12.
Oh, you were playing on your team.
Well, yeah, but it didn't put me off. Obviously, I liked to get.
Did you get game time?
I did get game time, yeah.
Okay. So, then you're not one of these people I'm talking about.
But there are other teams, then there are reserve teams below that at a level where maybe players can't get into that.
So you're getting game time?
Yeah, Yeah, I feel like everyone's getting game time.
No, there was, we just got like 20 players at under 13,
Anyway.
and lads be put aside at, on a Friday in training, being like, we're going to arrest you this weekend.
Yeah, because you're not good enough.
And it's real scarring for people.
Yeah, totally. Let's get Miles in, because I don't want to have an argument with him when he's not here. But I will, Anthony, don't worry.
Monday wrapped up.
That whole thing about learning to win and lose as well. They win and lose every single, like, they're having mess fights where they're shooting imaginary arrows against imaginary things, and they're keeping score themselves. Like, the whole thing that you can only learn by being crushed by your nearest rivals, otherwise you've never experienced life. It's nonsense.
Not that you can only learn, but I'm saying
it's nonsense.
But
they already learned this in loads of different places. But the people on Twitter know right, as opposed to, like, Maurice Brosnan has a good piece today where he talks to Pat Daly, and he goes through, like, the list of people who have actually thought about this and where the ideas came from. Duggan started it. And then is it Mickey Whelan did a PhD which kind of proved the whole thing, like more touches, more game, like late developers. There's a gazillion different reasons why this is actually a good idea and why it works.
Yeah, okay. I'm not saying go games are a bad idea for sure. I'm just saying the GS sometimes pick their battles. This
is the most important battle that they could possibly pick. Well, I'm 100% on.
Why not just educate the coaches and just?
Because you can try educating the coaches, but coaches have busy lives, and most of them are doing an absolutely sensational job. I have to say, any of the clubs that my kids go to, they're doing a sensational job about getting game time and making sure that everybody has an opportunity and mixing the talent level, so you get an opportunity to play up a bit and you get an opportunity to play down a bit. And I couldn't be happier with the way they're doing it. But I have seen other teams that we play against sometimes where the coaches are screaming at the under 8s, under 9s, under 10s, under 11s, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, what kind of madness is this? So the whole notion that, like, you could educate the coaches are too busy. Like, there are 3 training sessions or 2 training sessions in a match a week. There's teamers for 40 different people that you have to send out. There's sessions to be designed, and now you want to come and lecture them about how to be a better coach. It's really difficult.
Those parents and coaches that live vicariously through their kids, do they not exist in Go games as well?
Well, but you can't, because, like, I mean, sorry, absolutely, you do see some parents screaming at their children. You're going, what are you doing? Like, she's going to give this up. What are you doing? But most of them don't. Most of them are just, like, trying to organise it and have crack. It's supposed to be fun. What we want is participation. Anyway, we're already doing the bit that we're doing later on. So 2 minutes past 8 this morning, OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Up next, Vinny Perth.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
Paul could have been chucked out of the Ireland squad numerous times. Jack supported him. He was incredibly sensitive to anything with Paul and knew that one thing he couldn't do is discard him, because he felt if I discard Paul, I'm not sure what Paul would do. I think that always sat with Jack.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
And now for our weekly League of Ireland / Evan Ferguson watch. It's Vinny Perth. Vinny, how are you?
Good morning. How are we doing?
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, I've calmed down.
No. What's the point in calming down?
No fun.
There is no point.
No.
You've seen all this, right? What's your instinct about it?
I don't see it all, to be fair. I coached at more senior level, but
did you not? None of your kids? No.
So, but what you do get told is, and sometimes when I say things on here, I get corrected when I'm finished.
Okay.
Right. So
we should have a section at the top. Yeah. My apologies for last week.
So last week's chat around summer football. Not that I was corrected on it. Sort of the argument back is, it works around the DDSL works around school, and holidays is sort of the excuse that they come up with, but it's still wrong. But anyway, on your argument now, a lot of the problem is parents and coaches and parents. And going back to, I was at a club once and I tried to take some under 18 players into a senior section, and I was like, no, why would you do that? I don't want them going up to, we're trying to win a league. I was going, yeah, but I'm trying to make them better players. Yeah, but I've had this team since they were under 9s and I want to win a league. I went, so I want to win a league is what you just said. Not the kids. You don't want to make, Yeah, I put 9 years into this.
That's a problem.
I just, to be honest with you, where I was in the situation, I walked away from the conversation. They had a director of football, spoke to him. It's over to you, boss. But it is a mixture of parents going, I don't want my son being taken off. I want him to play. He's better than the group he's with. There's all of these, and there's a lot going on in it, to be honest.
So I don't know if you've had a chance to read Arthur James O'Dee's book about Limerick, but he's got a brilliant section about the academy, and there's an interview, or there's a moment where somebody explains how they became aligned, and they call all the underage coaches in, like these are at inter-county level, so obviously they're really good coaches already, and I think that I'm going to butcher this now. Arthur will do a much better job of it. But basically, the question is, whose job is it here to win a title? And everybody puts their hands up, and the guy at the top of the room goes,
Yeah.
The senior manager's job is to win the title. Your job is to get as many players as you possibly can through that will make his team. We don't care if you win titles, but if they come through with the skill set and the technical, tactical, physical know-how about how to get better constantly and come curious about improving themselves, then we are going to...
Titles will probably follow if a club went with that mantra, to be honest with you.
That's the thing.
And that's the thing about it, and it's about...
And actually they become better because they're more relaxed, because they're not like constantly chasing the fifth star a little bit like Leinster.
Yeah, and look, there's nothing wrong with elitism in sport. You have to have that. It's just where you started is the challenge. And if you've got a really good 12-year-old who's been, or 11-year-old playing for a local club, and he's been beaten 5 or 6 and he's really good, likelihood his parents are going to take him out of that and go somewhere else. So that is the problem, and the gaps is still there. Like the side's being hammered in all levels of football, and that's not good either. And I don't know how you get the balance right on that.
It seems like they're getting better in football. I just can't find the bit where you sent through the team sheets earlier on from the under 17s. But actually, one of the really brilliant things they've done is they've listed off all the clubs that the players have played for and where they've come through. And I think because previously it would have been like, you know, Pats, Rovers, Bows, whatever. There's one at Hull, but they've actually listed off.
That's St Kevin's, Leakslip, Ferrybank, Swords Manor, Swords Celtic, Crumlin United, like Carrigaline, all the local clubs.
There's no one in the League of Ireland saying we're the only ones that can do this, to be honest with you. And we're starting to see a joint up process. Was it managed correctly? No. Did Real Doctor get it, what he wanted through as director of football at the time? Yes. Did he do it the wrong way? That's what the schoolboy sections would say. But like someone like Mason Melia, who we would have spoken about before, he's a Wicklow lad. He's from around Newtown, Mount Kennedy. He would have played for Joey's 8 to 13, and then went to Bray Wanderers and has ended up at Pats. So, and obviously being at Joe's, he had to go to the next stage, which was League of Ireland, Bray, and then at Bray, he obviously felt I wanted to play at a better standard, which is St. Pat's, and that's okay. Like, and he's gone on to better standard now. He's in around the first team. So there is all of them stories. I always said from the beginning, the problem with how we manage this is we sort of cast aside the Joeys of the world, the Cherry Orchards, and I'm speaking from a Dublin perspective, but Cherry Orchard, St. Kevin's, that was forced a link with Bows, and it actually worked, and we should have done more of that. Crumlin United, a huge amount of talent and people who had big experience were sort of left behind, but it is starting to come together now, and I think it's very close to being a good system now, and it's, you know, there's a lot of hard work going involved. One
of the other things that I know Colin was asking you about before you came on was about how the scouting system actually works for players who do end up going to the UK, and there's actually a really strict set of rules in place.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because just go back to my day, you would just went on trial, or even up to 10 years ago, people go on trial. You go to a club, you'd spend 2 weeks, and if you think about it,
it's totally private. No one knows,
right? So and maybe using me has gone back too far, but a guy even 20 years ago would have went to trial. Most likely if you went to Liverpool, Palace, wherever, Celtic, people didn't see you before you got there, as in
The club.
the club you were going on trial to.
So they would have had somebody scouting you.
Yeah, so a scout would have sent over 3 or 4 players at a given window, or somebody he really liked, he'd go over. And the club then have a feel for you, train for them with the week. You go into their YTS, or if you were above that level, whatever youth level, you'd play a game the weekend, you'd get sent home, and if they were impressed with you, they'd call you back. But now it's completely different. The whole sort of FIFA really got a grip of this and set down a real sort of strict rules. So for an Irish player, first of all, when you go over, so if for example, nice and immediately bad example, but if a player of St. Pat's or Rovers is going on trial now, the club in England have watched a bit of video. There's a detailed scouting reports. They know the player inside out. So it's more you're not going on trial. It's used that word trial, but you're going to find out about each other a little bit. Okay, and then but FIFA have put in place now. There's a rule now in place where you've only got a 6-week window where it must be registered if you go on trial for someone. So if Vinny Perth goes on trial for Spurs tomorrow, or say on the 1st of January, I've got a 6-week window to go on trial to any club.
Right.
I could go 1 week Spurs, United, all the way for 6 weeks. They're not allowed to go on any more trials for 1 more year.
A whole year. Wow.
Yeah, and it's like, it's fascinating.
Why is that?
I suppose you've got to give FIFA some credit as well. So think about world football. There's kids flying all over the world. Parents going, oh yeah, we'll send. Like, I don't use they're exploiting kids, but they're just being sent everywhere. Trials, off you go. Clubs are taking chances on people from all over the world, and they're trying to stop kids all over the world effectively. So when you look at our situation, yes, Brexit hasn't helped us, but also FIFA will not allow an Irish player sign for an English club between 16 and 18, but we've a common travel agreement. So if I wanted at 17 to go to England and become an apprentice electrician, I can, but I can't become a footballer.
Yeah.
And I was saying, I was expecting a big club to challenge that in court, but there doesn't seem to be an appetite to do it because it's FIFA will control the international transfer.
Right.
So it's really restricted Irish players now in terms of Evan Ferguson was probably the last player to get through that system, and you've got to you can use Evan as a good example because Evan is now just gone 18, so it was back in on his mother, as typical, will probably hear this and she'll give out to me. I think it's November was his birthday, but Evan only would have went to the UK in November. So you think where he is now?
I know
there's no way he'd be where he is. So that's the challenge for the next Evan Ferguson or then whoever that may be. And League of Ireland clubs won't like me saying, and this is where I might get a few phone calls, and I know why, and I'm not saying we should, but we ain't able to provide what the really top elite footballers need between 16, 17 and wait for them to turn 18. And the challenge with that is you may be good enough for 16 and you may just have fallen off a little bit at 18 because of form and life and different things, and you say, well, you wouldn't have made it anyway. Well, you've missed a huge opportunity.
Yeah, slight counterpoint, right? Just on the off chance that somebody, the next Evan Ferguson comes through, is there a possibility that they rip up the scoring records in the League of Ireland and get a move to a championship team, and the club gets a better transfer fee up front? So this is the other side of this.
Yeah.
I did want to ask, like what percentage will Bowles end up getting? Is it Kevin's? Was it Kevin's?
Well, yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of that one, right? Yeah. No, because you've got to remember Kevin's is part of his development, and it's every year they'll probably get, Kevin's will probably get more in the fee than Bowles because he's been at Kevin's for longer. So yeah, of course, like if Evan had stayed, could he have played week in, week out for Bowles? Possibly. I don't know, but I know where if you had a 16-year-old son who was really, really good, I know where you'd want them.
Evan's story, his advantage is that he had a father who was versed in professional football.
I don't accept that.
As in, he went to clubs like Manchester United and maybe Liverpool and saw the system compared to Brighton and said, well, that fits that doesn't.
Yeah, but I think some of this is, and I think this is an important point to make, because people listen at different stages, and I'd like to, how do I say this? I know some people listen because I get a lot of feedback around League of Ireland ground. So just like some of the misnomers around, in fairness, there's a lot of ex-players' sons or sports people's sons who do well.
Yeah.
Right? But in no way, shape or form had Barry got Evan out the back garden at 5 o'clock in the morning doing doggies or anything like that.
He's not Frank Lampard Senior, you're saying?
No, and I just think that's important. Like it was less than 3 years ago. I went out the Wayside to watch a skills match Evan was playing in with Barry, and I'm going to say 3 years. It was, I actually remember clearly the day, because it was the day John Delaney was in front of the Oireachtas, so someone would be able to work out. It wasn't that long ago. And I remember he was on trials to United, Liverpool at the time, and saying to Barry, now I knew the answer, but I said to Barry, what's he doing playing here? Because it was probably, I don't know, skills football, but it was like senior or C level or something. Vinny, he has to play with his mates, right? So that's not a father who was like making someone eat within an inch of his life. It's not someone like, I've had a Chinese with Evan on a Friday night, so it's not. And I just think it's important to say that kid was allowed to grow up, like, and I think that has helped him. So he was allowed to grow up. He was allowed to make his own choices. When he went on trial, he was at a lot of big clubs, as you said. But I know he liked Liverpool when he went on trial, but Brighton was the one for him, and it was his decision. It wasn't an agent's decision. It wasn't his father and mother's decision. It was, obviously they all had inputs, but it was about a kid saying, this is where I feel really comfortable. And I think that's important, because I have seen and heard of the stories where it's gone the other way, where parents have got someone with a bit of talent and actually spoiled them, where Barry has just let it, and Sarah have just let the kid grow up normally, just so normally.
April 2019 was that game, so 4 years ago.
Yeah, 4 years ago I was watching him play a pretty bog standard skill match out in Wayside at 2 o'clock on would have been a Monday or a Tuesday.
And the picture last night is him beating De Bruyne for a header, and you're like, this is pretty good.
Well, like, that's where we were having Sunday dinner, and the Sky News or Sky Sports was on. Who were they playing? Was the last week, the week before? And you know, when Martin Tyler says, and it's live, and then he starts talking about Evan Ferguson, like it is
pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, like, and it does make the hair stand up and back in. And you don't take that for granted. And it's funny, I heard the discussion, it may have been here yesterday morning or a couple of mornings ago, talking about Keeving Kelleher, and there is another side to these guys that we like, and I do it, and we all do. We talk about them as the footballer. What's brilliant for sort of, the first thing my wife would say would be, Evan signed a new deal. Yeah. What sort? I don't know. I wouldn't ask. But she would see it from a perspective completely outside of football and go, he's probably sorted for life. Yeah, he's close to it, and that's a huge box ticked. And it's a bit like Kevin, where people are going, you know, he should be, for the last 3 years, should be getting out there, should be doing this. Kevin Keller's probably set up for the rest of his life as his kids. Now, comes the point where personal pride and football and all that stuff. But there's other sides to all these stories.
Well, he could be Scott Carson type figure who's still playing at 40, 42, you know?
Like, probably taking 15 grand a week out of Man City, and he dives all over the place and if they need to do a shoot where some supporters scoring against the first team, it's Scott Carson in goal. And hey,
he's delighted.
I take 10, 15 grand a week.
It's the greatest job in the world.
And I hope Kevin goes on to do more, but you have to remember, like, he's sitting on a big contract with Liverpool. He's sitting on a huge bonus structure inside it, part of the squad of a Champions League team for the last number of years, and you're going, ooh, will I take a risk of signing for a lower club or a championship club and doesn't go well for a year, or will I just make sure I'm secured? Now, I'm not saying that's what Keegan's thoughts are, but I'm just saying there isn't two sides to all of these stories, and now I hope it's time for him to go off and do his merry dance.
Let's talk about the League of Ireland situation at the moment. Some dropped points, I think, since we were last on, which is good.
Yeah, good news for you. Rovers were beaten. He loves this title race.
He just wants a race, a battle.
My Stephen Hendry and Steve Davis in me just is like, come on, lads, let's get on with it and go. The best teams have to win.
Yeah.
But it's been, like, first of all, I think you've got to give credit to to Drogheda part-time club, and Kevin Doherty, they've been playing quite well recently without getting the results, and they've been drifting down the table, but they were excellent up in Tallaght Stadium. And Freddie Draper, we've mentioned before in the show, talk about Evan Ferguson, he's 18 as well, and he's exactly the same frame, it's probably even bigger, but he scored an outstanding goal on the counter attack. He's on loan from Lincoln. I hope he can hold on to him till the end of the season, but they were excellent on the day. But what this result has done is, it's really tightened up the league again for everybody. It's given people a hope between obviously Bowes and Derry. Derry now have retaken the lead, so it's making it fascinating. The amount of drop points, I just can't get my head around it. The amount of teams losing 3 in a row and then winning 3 in a row, I have to say, I think I speak really highly of Rovers regularly here, but I know the other day was the exception where I think they had 28 shots and 11 on target, but they did have nearly 75% possession. Their ability to have a huge amount of shots on goal is just holding them back at the moment. I think they've got to be a bit more clinical.
Is that I suppose this is the question that we've been asking about them in European football over the last couple of years, is that sometimes you're expecting the form to come, and the form comes in patches, but it hasn't been good enough for them to go, okay, they're in the best form possible when the European fixtures arrive, and we're giving them the best chance. Maybe that's unfair. Maybe I'm not characterising it exactly right over the last couple of years, because it seems like they're getting better year on year, but you'd hope that the improvement would be faster.
They're an outstanding side. They're brilliant to watch, all of that stuff. And like the goal, if people listen, think about the goal that he conceded against Drogheda the other day. It's Jack Byrne on the edge of the box, and he's about 5 yards, and he's playing the ball into a striker's feet who is back to goal, and that's how they play. Jack is looking for him to bounce back to go to someone else, and there's and then what happens is that breaks down, and Drogheda go and score within 20 seconds, and you're like, I know the statistics of shots, and the reason I bring up, I don't like, Stephen Bradley brought them up after the game with 28 shots. That's a game we should win. Statistically, they're not having loads of shots on goal, because they're a bit like Man City to watch. They're brilliant technicians, but I've said it before in here, and I repeat myself, I'd rather watch a Liverpool Klopp team where it's Trent and Robinson and it's Salah and it's shots, and I'm probably going to concede 2 or 3, and I think they've got to be a bit more clinical as a team to go to that next level, and in Europe you'll probably only get 1 or 2 chances, and you've got to be more clinical, and that will hurt them, because they didn't score enough goals in Europe last year, and that's a blot in their copybook, I would say. Yeah.
Now the other thing is their recent run of form has been really, really good. Yeah. So there's going to be these little, and it's not even a blip to get held in a game like this. But if they were to back it up with, so they're at Cork tomorrow. You'd expect them to win this, right? Yeah. That's the situation at the moment, is you'd expect Shamrock Rovers to beat Cork City, but at the same time maybe there's a bit of a response from Cork, and
like they're one of the great League of Ireland teams of all time, and I don't compare areas, whether it's the Dundalk or the Shelbournes or whatever you want to go back. I don't like doing that, because the game has changed. Even in that 20 years, those 3 sides you could pick out, but they played 17 games and only won 9. So that means they've dropped points in 8 games. Like, that's a lot of games, and that's where I would have been critical at different stages of someone like Derry, where Derry now could turn to you, or Derry supporter will say, "What are you talking about? You're talking rubbish. We're top of the table. We're a point clear." But I see Rovers having these spells where they'll go 7 and 8 games win, and they'll have the odd hiccup here and there, particularly around Europe. And I think some of the other clubs have missed the boat. This Rovers side have dropped points, but yeah, look, the other thing we haven't really seen them is Rovers really tested. So for example, like you said, if Cork were to hold them scoreless after 65-70 minutes, then you start taking a chance, because you're a point behind Derry. And then you go, one of your fullbacks, your centre half runs out with the ball and you concede, and the manager might make a different substitution because he needs to get a win, and that's what we want to see. We want to see the great sides tested, and I think the challenge now is for Derry. Derry have to make sure we have a title race. I think they're the ones best equipped at the moment.
John Daly's first permanent game is Pat's Boss against Dundalk tomorrow night. Like, what's the I guess target for them? Is it silverware this season for Pats now at this stage, or?
I just think, like a lot of these clubs from sort of Bowes, Pats, Dundalk, European football is huge for them, and the awards is huge. It's, it's close. You're nearly guaranteed £400,000. The appointment of John Daly, just to touch on it briefly, I'm not a believer in appointing an assistant manager to follow a manager who got sacked. I always worry about that because
personal experience.
No, I didn't have any. I followed a manager who left. But what I'll say on John Daly is, I think this one is slightly different. I think he had a good relationship with people, and he's a good lad, and he has a set of balls. That's all I'd say to you, because. And people do be lazy around people like John Daly. John Daly had a great career in Scottish football. I think he was the first Catholic ever to sign for Rangers. He's worked under Craig Levine as well, Hearts as a coach. He's huge experience, and
Craig Johnson would have.
Sorry, there was
not Craig Johnson. Mo
Johnston,
yeah.
but he was one of the very few.
Yeah.
And for an Irish lad from Inchicore, around that area,
fair play.
He's got a lot of stick over the years, so he's got. He's not afraid to make decisions, and he's gone in there and done a great job. I actually think it's a great appointment. I really, really wish him well. Dinty is his nickname, but Dinty will do a really good job there. But Pats I don't want to say it's a sleeping giant. The crowds they're getting is brilliant. It's really high. We need Pats in the title race.
Yeah.
Need them in the title race. They're not there yet, but we need to get them in the title race.
I think once Rovers start dropping points, though, there is a psychological element to it where everybody else starts to think, actually, you know what, we're not beaten just before we go out here. And there was a bit of that for the last few seasons, and that's the sign of the league starting to bubble up and all of that working. Anything else briefly we got to go? But
no, it's obviously an interesting week this week. Pats and Dundalk, as you said, but you must say we shouldn't be given. We gave Sligo a lot of compliments here about four weeks ago, and they haven't won a game since.
Slid fairly bad.
So
I'm
sorry for that. I've got a bit of stick about that. But no, look, the Irish 17s, by the way, a lot of home-based players. So
it's 18 of the 20, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's because some of them guys would have been away, but we have to wish them well over the weekend.
Alright, Vinny, good stuff. Now, a reminder, don't miss all of the action in Rugby Daily today in your OTB podcast network, bringing you everything you need to know about rugby. It's all in partnership with Deliveroo. Deliveroo has some great bundles and deals. Just open the app, make your choice, and watch your rider come to you. Deliveroo, food, we get it. Up next, Jen Hogan and Paraic McDonald on that GA under 12 story. First, a slight tangent returned last night. Here's the lads talking about vintage jerseys.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't stick a jersey on now at all. I'd say mid-20s. I would.
Is there anything wrong with it though? I suppose. I think you naturally stop doing it. You just naturally stop wearing.
I think for the most part they're quite ugly though.
Yeah, well, that's from a fashion point. I just think it's a bad look.
I saw a fellow walking through town on the way in yesterday. I suspect he wasn't. I don't think he was from here. It was probably just he was in a group. So kind of the group. They didn't seem familiar with the surroundings. So I'm guessing it around. It was kind of around Dublin Castle. So you're probably it's one of the sites that are
Kerry, I'd say. Yeah.
And he was wearing. He was wearing a Man United jersey from 99, you know, the white one?
Yeah.
From 1999 with Keane 16 on the back.
Yeah.
And I thought, God, that's a very conscious choice. You thought about that and you thought, I'm going to be walking around Ireland. I'm going to wear this Roy Keane jersey.
You don't like that?
I don't like it. I don't think it'll look good.
I think it's interesting that at 32 he's so whatever about day to day, Monday to Friday, I think it's interesting he's feeling at 32. I don't know if I'd be wearing a Kerry jersey to Croke Park anymore. I don't think again, there's no judgment either way, but I especially wouldn't judge someone wearing a jersey to a match.
Yeah, the one he's picked out as well is the ultimate Kerry jersey to wear. It's the one everyone wants to pick up, which is that late 90s one season Adidas jersey. So it's not like you're wearing a bad Kerry jersey.
Croke Park would be a dour place if everyone says, well, I need to wear my polo Nice closure.
You're very great for this.
The thing about that is now, and I disagree on the Kerry thing, but say if you're going to Clare matches, like I think the Clare kit is a very nice kit. I think it looks brilliant on the pitch, right? I don't think as an adult the bright yellow jersey looks particularly good with a pair of jeans. And do you know, and you do get to that point where it's like, I have a very nice like navy t-shirt here that has the Enclore symbol, and it has the blue and yellow strips, but ultimately I can wear it all night and not feel like
I'd be going for that.
I'm luminous.
We'll push on. Look, each to their own is ultimately the only conclusion we can reach.
Right, that is a slight tangent. You can subscribe to it in the OTB daily feed. Now, a couple of days ago, Cara Kane posted a tweet and a story from the Irish News saying that the GA is clamping down and will sanction those involved in competitive games for players under the age of 12. Particular impact on blitzes, no keeping scores at games, no semi-finals or finals, no cups allowed. And he had the full story. And then obviously there's been a massive reaction to this. It has been a big topic of conversation over the last couple of days. I'm delighted to say Irish Times columnist Jen Hogan is with us in studio, and on the line we have Paraic McDonald, the GA development coach. You're both very welcome, and you've both been talking about this. I might start with you, Jen. You've written about this before. What was the experience that you found from parents of kids when the kids were involved in sport that was competitive or super competitive or mildly competitive at underage level?
Yeah, I mean, I got a huge response to a piece that I did a few months ago talking about this, and parents got in touch to say that their children had dropped out of sports, I suppose, altogether, had felt completely excluded, humiliated, terribly upset on the sidelines, and they were really concerned, I suppose, about keeping them involved in sport. And some of them tried to talk to coaches, some of them tried to talk to clubs. It wasn't very well received. I mean, it wasn't just coming from clubs; it was coming from parents sometimes on the sidelines too. Some of the aggression and some of the negativity that the kids were experiencing. But this whole idea of maybe token involvement as well, having children kind of involved on a kind of tokenistic level, where they got on the pitch for a couple of minutes, a box was ticked, and that was it, and the child was supposed to be happy. And it was because parents said it was more important to the coaches to win than to include all the children and get all the children involved, and they were very much focused on the win, forgetting that it was about children.
Why do you think there was such a big response?
I suppose because so many people could relate to it, and everybody had a story. There, even within families, there was lots of parents came back and they said they had maybe one child who was really good at sport, and he or she got to leapfrog, that practice of jumping over an age group and got the opportunity to do that, versus a sibling who was left on the sidelines or who was humiliated because a big brother or a big sister came in and took a place on their team, and they didn't get to play.
They were on the two sides of the leapfrogging.
Yeah, so they got to see it firsthand. And when you see the kind of negativity that it has, or that their parents felt that they actually even had to pull their children out of sports for their own protection, or you had kids there was one parent wrote, and she said that her son vomited the night before. He was so distressed. He had gone to all the training sessions, but when match day came around, it was much more important to win. So what the coach termed to be the best players were put on. Instead, he didn't get to play. He still got his medal, but that kind of thing of going into school the next day, everybody knowing he didn't play, in spite of turning up and in spite of training and in spite of being part of the team and doing his absolute best, it wasn't good enough for the coach. The win was more important.
Paraic, what's your understanding of why the Go Games exists within the GA?
Good morning. Yeah, the Go Games are probably one of the initiatives in the GA that I feel has worked very well, but probably in about 12 to 15 years now, in varying degrees and varying counties. I think Dublin was probably one of the early adopters of it. And basically the Go Games came in for a reason that up to then, kids were playing in sort of adult structures and adults, competition structures and adult game structures. For instance, probably you were playing 15-a-side at under 10, you were playing on a big pitch, you were playing in big goals with a big heavy size 4 football, and Go Games sort of were brought in as a sort of child-friendly and with a couple of key principles like full participation, inclusion, child-appropriate sized pitches, child-appropriate sized goals. So, for instance, at under 8, you're playing 7-a-side on a small pitch that maybe 60 metres by 30 metres. The Go Games footballs and slitters were brought in, so first touch football for under 8 is a lot less threatening when you're hit with it than, would say, a size 4. And again, I suppose a big change over the last 20, 25 years would have been kids are starting sort of organised sport at a lot earlier age. So back when I was playing, I think my first game would have been at under 12. Now you have kids coming into clubs at 4 and 5. So we had to meet that demand with appropriate sized structures and appropriate sized games for them.
They're called go games because everybody's supposed to get a go.
Yeah, so no subs, everybody plays, and as I said, at under 8 it's 7 aside, at under 9 it can move up to 8 to 9 aside, at under 11 it's 11 aside, at under 12 it's 13 aside, and it's only then when you hit youth, which is under 13 and above, that you're into what we would class as sort of traditional GAA, where bigger pitches, 15 aside, and a size 4 ball, moving on to a size 5 ball later on than that, and then subs on the line, and the competitive element sort of becomes a little bit more sort of focused on then.
Morris Brosnan's got a good piece in the Examiner today where he talks about the annual report this year and how in the annual report it was kind of flagged that they were going to start taking action on this, that there had been observances of the principles being breached. Is that your understanding, Paraic? Is that what we're seeing around the country, that we're kind of backsliding a bit to more competitive structures? I
suppose anecdotally you hear sort of certain tournaments and certain blitzes where it is competitive and might have been cups on offer and knockout games and stuff like that. I'd also know the flip side of that, where I've been involved in blitzes myself, which is purely participation. And I think at the end of the day, blitzes, I think that some people are reading into this that blitzes are gone or blitzes can't be held. I think participation blitzes can and will be held in this. It's just that there won't be knockouts, there won't be semi-finals, there won't be finals, that everybody goes, everybody gets the same amount of games. It can be structured in a way that can, you're playing against clubs or teams the same sort of size as yours or ability-wise. So for instance, when you do get under 12 in Dublin, certainly it is graded. It's semi-graded at under 11, where you've teams at A stream, B stream, C stream, and you can have underage blitzes, and you can invite teams, and you can have it targeted at a B stream or a C stream, so that everybody is treated equal. And I think that's the big thing in Go Games: everybody's treated equal. It's inclusive and it's full participation.
Jen, this story is obviously again news this week because of Carol Kane's piece about the GAA, but it's not specific to GAA, is it?
No, it's not specific to GAA, and I actually spoke to parents even last night ahead of coming on today, and I did ask them. It is a big problem in soccer as well. That one is particularly mentioned. Rugby seem to get glowing reports for the most part. They seem to be very aware of inclusion, and most of the reports that came back on children involved in rugby, the parents had great things to say. But soccer, it's a big issue there, and I mean, anybody who's ever been on the sideline will see that. They'll see sometimes coaches completely forgetting that this is children that we're talking about, the same children who are on the sideline, always being subbed, even with the rolling subs, the same kid going on and off, and it's something that, I mean, parents are hugely aware of, but the children themselves are also hugely aware of.
Yeah, like the children aren't taken.
They're not stupid. No. And when you look at Norway, for example, 93% of children play sports in Norway, and they have no competitive sports at all under the age of 13, which is so, and they've obviously a huge or very successful elite athletes later in life, and that moves over into adulthood, where you have high participation in adults. If we continue kind of down the road of kind of turning a blind eye to this kind of competition and children being excluded, then we risk starving them, I suppose, and robbing them of the lifelong benefits that go hand in hand with sports. But it isn't GAA, but it is mostly GAA that I hear about. It is mostly GAA that it comes back to. It's usually the parents getting in touch saying that this kind of practice is going on. It's supposed to be for the community. Everybody doesn't feel involved in the community. It seems to depend really on how good you are, and it comes down to that.
Okay, so I realise you've given us facts and figures, but for your opinion, why is it? What is it?
What is it about the competition?
What is it about the ego of these parents?
I think it's maybe they're reliving their youth. Maybe that's what they want, or they want to see themselves as this wonderful manager, and bask in the glory of success. And I mean, look, we're inherently, I suppose, there's a degree of competitiveness in us all. Everybody likes to win. Children like to win too, but it's more about fun, and it should always be about fun. And I suppose the goal should always be about keeping as many included and as many playing for as long as possible. That should be the goal. But I think when it comes to grown-ups, they forget they're dealing with children. And I've seen, only last week as a parent, I was on the sideline and I saw incredible behaviour. It wasn't my coach, I'll have to say our coach is deadly, but I did see incredible behaviour on the sidelines, and it was hard to believe that the coach was roaring at kids the way he was roaring at kids, and it moves over then onto the pitch, and you see it with the children. They're picking up on this vibe. So it's a really important thing that it is reined in, and that the parents do realise this is kids, this is children, it's about fun, it's about keeping as many involved for as long as possible. What's the answer on that then? I know we sat at a panel before. Antonio Montero was in here, who is involved in the Silent Sidelines initiative, where you literally, parents can't say anything, coaches can't say anything except for little words of advice here and there. Like, is that the only way forward, do you reckon? It's a bit depressing if you think you have to go that way. If that's the only solution. But if the adults can't behave, there's merit in that. If you're encouraging a team along, that's great, as long as you know that you're remembering to encourage the whole team, and there's not blame being apportioned to a young child who misses a shot. That we're not seeing that sort of thing. You'd like to think that kind of positive comments can come, and if the adults can be grown up enough to remember to support properly. But like what I witnessed last week, and what parents are reporting to me that they're witnessing, is they're actually hearing abuse of players, like kids. They're kids, and that's the thing that I can never get my head around. And I'm going to sidelines and on the side of pitches for years and years and years at this stage. And when I hear these stories coming in from parents, it's all so familiar. So the idea of silent sidelines, it's not appealing. It might not be like that kind of ban, for parents. It might make them wise up. Maybe if they introduced it for a short while and got parents to wise up a bit, and then we could get back to supporting our children, as we should be able to. I mean, these problems are being created by the grown-ups, not by the kids. Except it does filter on then, and the children pick up on it, and they think this is an acceptable way to behave, and maybe they're not so kind to their teammates. Paraic, again, just from an instinct level, what's your view? And is it good that this has happened this week, because actually it starts the conversation and we get to draw out people's views and opinions, and you can calmly have a conversation about it?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's no harm that we look at structures, and we look at why we do things and why things are in place. I believe there's a big part of this is education. I think part of it is club philosophies and what clubs are about. And I believe most clubs are child-centred, child-friendly. I think most clubs want to keep as many players involved in their club and participating and bringing them all the way through into minor and into adulthood. I think that can only be done by stuff like the Go Games ethos and everybody getting a chance and everybody been developed. And the education piece is, understanding of development rates and understanding of stuff like relative age effect and understanding not every kid is developed by under 12. And, in fact, in my experience, very few of them are developed. There's still a lot to do in their development in terms of technical, tactical, physical, mental. So, education from a coach's point of view, GA player pathway came in there a couple of years ago, and it was a big change in terms of some of the player pathways that went before. This one had some core philosophies, and included in that was, quality coaching, connecting kids to their teams, connecting kids to their clubs, being inclusive. And that tagline, I think somebody mentioned earlier there, as many as possible for as long as possible. And I think once, clubs have a sound development philosophy, the one that jumps out, I think that everybody would know from a GA point of view, would be Nemo Rangers, where Nemo Rangers don't have it as a badge of honour that they're not interested in winning underage competitions or underage leagues, that it's about development for them. It's about bringing as many kids through to minor and into adult. And I still think they're to have a philosophy like that in a club and a very sort of public philosophy, I think is an example for a lot of clubs to follow. Is that relative age effect report that you mentioned? Is that the decision making from the GA as to why it's under 12s for Go Games and not say under 10s or under 14s? No, I don't think that's relative age effect. I think that's more that you have your. I suppose there's a big drop off going from primary to secondary school, and I think that's one of the keys that. To be, in primary school, where that corresponds to the Go Games. There is, a lot of work been done coming in one school, a lot of GA clubs going into the local schools. I think participation rates are very high. I think the fall off is after that when they go into youth sport and into let's say secondary schools. And I think the challenge is when we get out of go games and into that, how can we keep more kids involved at youth sport all the way through into adult.
I haven't seen the full text of the letter, but my understanding is that the whole point of this is like to try and put up guardrails so that everybody sticks within the guardrails by and large. But I don't think anybody says you can't have occasional one-off blitzes. It's the fact that it will become a regular thing where trophies and leagues and inter-club rivalry becomes more important than actually getting more people to play more often. That's my understanding, at least of a Paraic. I don't know if that's correct or not.
I suppose I'm sort of more knowledgeable about the Dublin setup because I've been working in Dublin GA circles for a while now. I think by and large clubs are doing a very good job in terms of participation, in terms of, I think the Dublin leagues serve teams and clubs very well. You've two codes. You have hurling football, lady football, camogie. It's week on, week off. But over the course of a year, I suppose you get somewhere between 20 to 25 games in total. And on top of that, you layer in the trips away and the challenge matches and these blitzes. So I think the blitzes are fine once they're participation blitzes. I do think by and large, I think, unfortunately, this has come to a head at the moment because it's only one or two coaches, one or two overexcited parents on the sideline have brought this to a head, and it's no harm every now and again just to stand back and examine it and maybe just re-emphasize what's important and why we're doing it and what the outcomes that we're looking for, which is as many kids as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah, fair enough. This story is not going to go away.
No, it's not going to go away. I mean, like I said, I asked parents last night about what was happening or what their experience was just a few months on from writing the last time, and it was the same huge response. Parents getting in touch, but hopefully it'll mean, I mean, the fact that it's back in the public eye again, hopefully it will mean that we will see the policy being followed and kids being involved and nobody feeling that they're always on the sideline and excluded, and that they feel that they have a place within sports.
All right, we'll leave it there. Jen Hogan and Paraic McDonald, thank you both very much for your views this morning. You can get us on the YouTube comments, so youtube.com/offtheball. You need to be subscribed to our channel if you want to leave a comment. You can also tweet us at OffTheBallAM. But at 8:46, I'm delighted to say John Duggan is with us. John, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger and Shane. Some breaking news. Arne Slot is staying at Feyenoord. He has insisted that he will remain at the Rotterdam club despite speculation linking him with a vacancy at Tottenham Hotspurs. The Spurs seeking a permanent replacement, as we know, for Antonio Conte, who left the club in March, and Slot has ruled himself out of contention, speaking to AD in the Netherlands and saying his wishes to remain with Rotterdam, who he guided to the league title first time in 6 years, just recently at 44-year-old. These are the quotes. I've been hearing a lot of the rumours going around about other clubs interested in me, although I'm thankful my wish is to stay at Feyenoord and continue working on what we created last year. There is not, and there has not been, transfer conversation. Yesterday's meeting was exclusively for an extension. All talks with the club have always been only in that sense. I'm looking forward to next season with Feyenoord. So Tottenham, Nagelsmann has fallen through. Mauricio Pochettino, the beloved Argentinian, is going to Chelsea as their new manager, and we could be in a Nuno Espirito Santo situation now where we're going around the magic roundabout trying to find a manager for the next season.
It's going to be Nagelsmann now, right? Nagelsmann wanted too much money. They went, no, you can't have that much money. And 5 weeks later they're going to be, how much did you want, Julian? No, that sounds like a good deal. Well done, yeah.
Falling back.
Which sounds like the Antonio Conte situation.
And
that's what happened there. And then eventually Conte came in and did well, got them into the Champions League, but then his relationship with the club broke down. And I just really feel at this stage that as wonderful business people that ENIC are in terms of building the bricks and mortar of that magnificent stadium and training ground, and Spurs are doing well at youth level, it's time to give another owner a chance. It's time to give Peace a chance and another owner to come in. And
Shifty lad says Ruud van Nistelrooy has resigned, having won 2 trophies. Could he be Spurs bound?
Well, look, Shane Hannon, Ger Gilroy could be coming there at Spurs. Get the new suit, lovely kind of navy suit with a bit of a white shirt.
Brendan Rodgers, once Leicester relegated, will leave, and surely
he's already gone.
Oh, sorry, of course.
Yeah,
but is he not? He's in the top 5 in terms of odds between Nagelsmann, I mean, Ryan Mason, it's too soon, probably.
Who can work with Daniel Levy? Who can work with Daniel Levy in a smooth basis?
Nobody.
Well, not since Pochettino, who was sacked after the Champions League final appearance. So we haven't seen Mourinho, who has done well now since he's left Spurs.
Yeah,
Roma.
he's done all right.
Like he'll be bringing Roma into the Champions League very soon.
Yeah.
So you could have to think that Antonio Conte will probably have success in his future. And I really do believe that the chairperson needs to step back a bit and just allow the football side to be run in a football way and run the business as well as the business has been run. But ultimately, the business here is football, and Tottenham are, with every single day, they're slipping further and further behind the rest of the Premier League giants.
Who's your pick as a Spurs fan?
It doesn't matter. I've just got to say, I'm so disillusioned, Shane, that.
I was like that with Villa when they appointed David O'Leary. You're like, seriously, come on. But
it'll all be okay in the end.
I think somebody progressive, like Vincent Kompany type, or you want a Tottenham style Arteta. You want an Arteta, somebody who's been working with somebody like Pep, as Arteta did for a few years, who's progressive. Like my pick, if you ask me who my dream pick would be, De Zerbi.
Yeah, I was going to say there are other Roberto De Zerbis out there, but maybe the likes of Arne Slot is one of them and just doesn't want the job. So,
like Tottenham let Eric Ten Hag through their fingers.
Yeah,
that's bad, And just to me, if you watch the All or Nothing documentary, there's just too much control from the board on the managerial situation, and the recruitment at Tottenham has been absolutely shocking in recent years.
Yeah.
And we see when we compare Everton, Man United, and Spurs with Brentford and Brighton, and actually I would also include Manchester City in that, the way they signed Alvarez for 15 million quid or 14 million quid. Recruitment and a good manager and letting the football side run itself, and you can see Arsenal's stability. Tottenham. When's the last time Tottenham were linked with anybody? As a player, they're not linked with any players. Like today's papers, Harry Kane, United are going to make an early bid for him. Ten Hag, one of the journalists said, is obsessed with him.
It's interesting use of language, isn't it? I think.
Well, I've already said I thought Brendan Rodgers was still at Leicester, hence is my lack of recollection of him leaving the job. But
Dean Smith, but
Big Sam could be available. John,
come on.
He's only there on a temporary basis, at least, of course.
Tottenham will never become a contender again until the club is sold to whoever. It's the Qataris want to buy it for $2 billion, because it is worth $2 billion now, because it is a magnificent. It's probably one of the best stadiums in the world, and it's in prime real estate in London.
Home of the Heineken Champions Cup and
that's it. That's and go-karting
next year.
And Beyonce's doing 5 nights there in the next couple of weeks.
Jags are playing a game there next year as well. The Irish Jacksonville Jaguars,
of course.
So we'll see.
All right. Anything else?
Well, we'll see if there's an announcement today around an NFL game in Dublin.
I don't think they're going to announce it, but the fact that the game, the launch is happening this morning. The Steelers are over. The owner is there, one of the legendary QBs who played here the time that they played the Bears in the 80s is coming, and the two main NFL executives who are European based are over in Dublin today.
Right.
And it'll be, if there's no game after this, well then
it's been some jolly.
Come on. Come on, we've been getting teased now for about a decade. I was talking to somebody saying that they don't expect an announcement of a fixture, but maybe an intention to have a fixture. So next year's fixtures have been announced already. So is it a fixture the year after that we're getting? But they need to be like saying there will be a fixture in the next 3 seasons. Otherwise it's like, come on.
Stick it down on paper.
Come on, like you're just coming to like sell more Steelers and Jags jerseys, like that's very elaborate, lads. You could have just, sent a poster or bought some ads. There better be a game at Croker.
You heard it here first.
So I will put those points to the owner of the Steelers later. Anyway, good stuff.
All right, lads.
Thanks, John. 8:52, just turned 8:53. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. A few quick comments for you. Pod says, I'm sick hearing about this. I just about kept my 2 daughters in GA after dealing with coaches who dropped them from players for a younger age group. Go Games have been looking after this for years, which is great. Mark says, you need to send coaches down to take a look at mini rugby, incredibly well run and exclusive for every single kid. Kieran O'Connor says, it's ironic that our own Indigenous cultural community sports organisation is the most exclusionary, elitist and hierarchical sports institution in the country. I just, Kieran, I know you're being slightly facetious with that, but actually it is the GAA themselves who are pointing out the problems within the GAA, which is very rare in Irish life or Irish civil life where you take on people in your own organisation and say, this is wrong, we need to improve. And in fairness to them, and we've put them through the ringer and plenty of different things here on the show over the years, from Proposal B to the conflict of interest at the core of GA Go. But on this issue, it is the hierarchy who are saying we need to do better on this. Once there's a trophy involved, skills focus and player development stops, says John Collins. Talk to smaller clubs about losing players and they'll agree with Go Games, says Cathal Keane. Nigel Gallagher says an ultra competitive attitude at that age is bad for player development and will alienate what could be brilliant players in the future. That's the thing. Like, these are the people who are going to be coaching teams in 15, 20 years. If you're alienating them and if you're not bringing them and their parents down week in, week out, then the pool gets smaller and the whole thing just is like self-defeating. For what? For your ego? I mean, what is wrong with people?
I do have some sympathy for the underage coaches as well, not the ones that are clearly out for the winning. But I mean, you say who'd be a referee, who'd be a coach? If you have so many young players, you have to get equal game time. Sometimes it's impossible to keep everyone happy.
Well, it's not in Go Games.
Not in the Go
Games. You
Games.
have loads of games, and everybody just plays, and it doesn't matter.
Takes the pressure off the coaches, I guess.
Well, the outcome doesn't matter. Like, obviously, you're trying to get the players to get better, and you're trying to decide which group is the one that needs the most coaching and which skills. And they do an incredible job. Of juggling those things. But going away from Go Games is like, oh, we had this really good thing. It's too good for us.
But they won't go away from it.
They're absolutely not going away from it. They fought tooth and nail to get to this point. And if there's any counties who aren't embracing it, then they should be named and shamed. Anyway, we need to move on because very difficult time for Wexford hurling at the moment. I'm delighted to say Liam Griffin is with us. Liam, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. What's your level of concern about Wexford hurling at the moment? Great concern, because for the simple reason we're not doing well, and at senior level now it's a bit of contradiction, because we've started to do really well at under 20. We're the only county that's been in the last two Leinster finals in under 20 hurling, losing to Kenny by a point last year, who went on to win the All-Ireland, and then losing to Offaly this year. Two good teams, by the way, that we lost to. And but the problem is that it's exactly the wrong time for the senior team to be faltering, because we need to get the point of entry at the top level, because that's important for young players being developed if we want to stay at the top. Because Rory O'Connor and these who came on first a few years ago, they've been at the top level. So we really need to be at the top level, and considering that under 20 squads, or two squads that have got to that Leinster final, we need to be there for their further development and for the development of Wexford hurling. So it's a dangerous time at the moment in case we are relegated. That would be a big blow to the county, especially at the underage level. It seems like it's also come from left field in many ways. Like, the circumstances of the 17-point lead against Westmeath, but it also feels like there's been an injury crisis this year, and that's look, maybe I'm wrong, right? But I understand there's talk about the team not being as well conditioned as they need to be. Their second half performance has been consistently poor, but at the same time, I definitely felt like they had a really progressive young manager who was, rising to the peak of his powers. So I don't know, what's your instinct about, is it just a weird sequence of events, or is there something more fundamental at issue?
No, it's a weird set of events, but also allied to that, we've lost Paddy Foley to Australia, and Paddy Foley was centre back and he was a brilliant player, and last year we beat Kilkenny in Nolan Park in the championship for the first time in our history, actually beating them in Nolan Park. The nearest we got was back in 1951 or something, to beat them in Nolan Park. So he was gone. We lost Damien Rick. Lee Chin has been injured for a year and a half, and I don't know what the story is with him. He's not at full pelt, and we need him at full pelt. We've also Liam Ryan picked up a bad injury, so we have had a serious amount of injuries. But having said that, we were walloping Westmeath at half time. We were doing the same with Antrim. Now, that's been forgotten about. That's just actually been forgotten about by those who wouldn't be looking closely at Wexford hurling, because with about 4 minutes to go in the Antrim game, we were very well in front in the Antrim game, but it came, I think, to about 4 minutes to go, or maybe slightly less. Antrim had got back to 4 points, and only for James Murray made a good save on the goal. we would have been a point behind. They would have been a point behind with about 2 minutes to go, I think, or thereabouts. And I believe that momentum would have carried them over as well. So we were in mortal danger. So what's wrong? What's wrong? Why is this happening? Well, we played excellent against Antrim in the first half, really, really good. We played really, really good against Westmeath, and then in the second half in both games we failed and we went backwards. But the team just didn't respond in the second half. And you know yourselves from sport, when the tide starts to come in on you in a match, it's bloody hard to get it out. So you could see when Westmeath started to play really, really well. And one good thing about the Westmeath thing that I would be very happy about from Westmeath's sake is that they're making good progress, and it's good to see that. And we can't take from their victory. It was a great victory for them. But the one thing they started doing was playing direct hurling. And I'm looking at the papers last week, 25 points for Tipperary, 25 points, for Limerick, and you're looking at all of the 20 points, and some of that stuff is totally boring. Not that those matches were boring, I'm not suggesting they were, but with all these points and so forth. But going direct seems to be gone out the window sometimes. It's all through the lines, and that's not necessarily the best idea. So Westmeath showed a way that you can win a match from behind by going direct and picking up every man in the place, and they deserve to win. So we are now in a crisis mode.
Is it concerning as well, Liam, that there just seems to be no learning from one game to the next? Like even that Galway defeat, there was a lot of criticism about the persistent use of a sweeper and some of the tactics, especially in the second half. Then, of course, the Dublin game, a lot of wides for Wexford in that one. Even the win over Antrim that you mentioned, like they still conceded 125. So game to game, there just seem to be persistent issues that keep cropping up.
Yeah, there are. And the other thing too was we missed 2 penalties in the championship so far. We missed a penalty the last day, and we missed a penalty in a previous game. So yeah, those fundamentals and shooting, 19 wides I think against Dublin, and we've had wides. So that's true. But at the end of the day, I still think that the team, the basis of that team is still very good. But at this time, I think we really do need to throw off the shackles and really hurl against Kilkenny. Now, we beat Kilkenny in Nolan Park last year in a terrific game. So we have them now in our own pitch. We have them down in Wexford Park. So I know the players are probably a bit fragile at this moment because of what's happened. But there's no reason why, if we don't hurl our living best and play a good game plan, and if we can do that, I think we have a good chance of beating Kilkenny. But if we don't knuckle down for the whole time, be brave, take it on, and make sure we're doing it for every minute of the game. I think that gives us a good chance. I really do think we have a good chance if they click on that form in that way. And I think they're quite capable of doing that. They did it in the first half, in the last 2 games, and if they could keep that momentum up, so that's surely not too big an ask. But I think complacency sets in when you're playing teams that are considered to be lower division than you. You actually start to just amble along at times, and it's very hard to get going. But Kilkenny, hopefully, to get going for it, and I think they will.
I think the lads in the hurling pod this week as well with ourselves, Liam, we're talking about Kilkenny maybe taking the game more seriously than people possibly think. The prospect of sending Wexford down might be a bit of motivation for some of those Kilkenny players. Do you expect that they will take that game seriously?
Oh, absolutely. And I wouldn't want them to do anything else. This is sport. You don't give fellas favours. You've got to earn your right to win the games. You've got to earn it, and I hope to come with their full game, because and I hope that we have our full game. I wouldn't want to be dependent on somebody else just coasting in the game. But I don't think Kilkenny will do that. I don't think they've ever done it, and fair dues to them. So that's it. Bring it on, and Wexford should stand up and be counted, and hopefully that they will be stand up and be counted, because they have done it last year. That's the go-to game to look at. We did it, and we did it well, and so why not? So it's in the lap of the gods, but it's not mostly. It's in the lap of the players to give us 100%. They showed it in the last games. They can do it. So for a half an hour, for a half a game. So why not now? This is when Wexford needs them, and I think they've got to forget about everything else. Only this is a game for Wexford, and it's a very, very important game for Wexford, and whatever issues you have or whatever, leave them behind, or if management and players, whatever, with working together, I don't know, I'm not sure. But listen, give it everything, be brave and go for it, and give us a good game of hurling, and let's see what happens. And I think we can do it.
over the last 5 or 6 years, it has always felt a little bit like the county board in Wexford were progressive and trying to make the right decisions about stuff. And look, there's difficulties in a county that is a dual county essentially, where football is taken very seriously at club level. And I know there's a bit of controversy, residual controversy, about the speed at which the championships are run off. So it's one championship run off full and then the other one runs off, and that was a decision that the clubs made. Is that the best thing for the inter-county senior hurling team?
Yes, it is. It is and it isn't, because it is the best in our circumstances. I'm in favour of both hurling and football, and but there's no mercy for being dual counties all over. There is no system that's going to help to make it better, because unless we have a split season, and that split season is there. Now, we were playing hurling one week, football the next week, previous to this. So therefore, for football, you were training by playing hurling, and for hurling, you were training by playing football. So like every second thing, that doesn't work. That just doesn't work. They're two totally different games. So that split was done, so that played hurling first and then played the football second. Now, we are a pure dual county, and there is no reward for being a dual county. There's actually no reward for being a dual county anywhere across the way, because it impinges with everything in terms of the amount of time you have on the field, and the amount of practice and all sorts that you get. And there's also tension between hurling and football with some non-progressive people that seem to think they are progressive. Instead of finding a way, they just keep looking from one to the other on occasions. And that's part of being a dual county. But I think, from our perspective, I think that the championship itself has to be run off like that, unfortunately. But we have too many games in certain areas of even at inter-county level. There's some meaningless games being played, and we need to look at the entire. Look at the GAA needs to look at itself from the top to the very bottom, from annual congress and all the way the way the games are being run. That's just my opinion. I think there's an unbelievable amount of work that we should do and have to do, because don't forget, the RSI report showed that the big dropout in Gaelic football and in hurling over the years. That was out in 2013. I would say that's become probably worse. 70% dropout in Gaelic football at club level, and a 60% dropout in hurling at club level. That's a crisis, and it hasn't been fully addressed. But we're still maybe muddling a bit too much in relation to how we're trying to create the inter-county game or the new reality to deal with that. So we've a lot of work to do to make it smoother for everybody. But in the middle of all that, you've got a dual county dealing with all the complications, and that certainly is a negative influence.
All right, we'll leave it there for now, Liam. Best of luck this weekend. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you. It's
Liam Griffin giving us some thoughts on the situation in Wexford. Some highlights for you on the Off the Wall podcast network today. Wednesday Night Rugby with Keith Wood and Fiona Hayes, looking ahead to the Munster game this weekend. They also do some Leinster chat as well, if you can stick it anymore. The football show from last night, of course, has Dan McDonald talking about the Under-17 show. And Football Daily is your daily short fix of all the football news that you need to know across the world. You can follow us across our social channels and subscribe to the OTB podcast network. After the ad break, Andy Mittens, you had to be there.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
On this week's The Koigig podcast, we had an exclusive interview with Manchester United's Ona Battier ahead of the final day of the Women's Super League season.
I like and I love these kind of moments, these kind of games, like with those crowds and that pressure. I just love it. So I really wanted to enjoy every second.
Listen now and make sure you subscribe to the Koigig podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
It's so unexpected.
It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
Right, I'm really looking forward to this. I'm delighted to say Andy Mitten is with us this week for You Had to Be There. Andy, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. All good, thanks.
This is very difficult. A lot of people complain about like how do I fit a whole life of watching sport into 5 things? How difficult was it for you?
Very difficult. I'm probably watching 85 live football matches each season. Maybe 10 of them are excellent, and maybe 5 of them are wow. And I've been doing that for nearly 40 years.
Wow.
Okay. So there's a lot of games, and then that's just only one sport. Obviously, I'm watching a lot more football than other sports, and we're going to stick this one to football. But yeah, very, very difficult. But I just chose ones which were varied and covered my life as a supporter, but also as a journalist. I didn't just want to do 5 Man United ones, for example. I've probably watched Lionel Messi play live 200 times, and I thought, got to have him in. But
you could have picked 5 Messis and we would have been, okay, fair enough. that would have been allowed. Come here, you mentioned other sports. Are you an avid watcher of other sports? Do you attend other sports? I mean, where the hell would you get the time to?
I'd say non-league football would be my other sport, and I struggle to get the time. So I'd support a local team called Trafford in the part of Manchester where I'm from, and I'm lucky if I get to 2 games per season. If I'm just going to a game and not working, it's a real joy. I watched Man United's women the other night against Manchester City, and was lucky to be there with my family and not to work, and that was good. I like live sporting events. I'm very much, if I was in Ireland and somebody said there's a game of Gaelic football or hurling, I would be absolutely up for going, because it's not just about the sport, it's about the sense of community and all these people being brought together. And I'm fascinated by stadiums, by fan culture, by what goes on outside the venues. I find myself looking at these stadiums in Ireland with huge capacities, because they're mostly standing, and thinking, if that was in England, the capacity would be less than half the published figure in Ireland. So I'm a fan of everything about it, not just the excellence of the elite athletes. I might go to horse racing once a year, tennis once a year, just out of curiosity more than anything else. I'm not an expert by any stretch, but I like going to live events. I think watching something on a screen is very much second best for me. I'd rather watch a game of non-league football in person than watch a game of football, whatever level, on a television. And I realise I'm in the minority there, because most people consume sports through a screen. When did you start United We Stand? I started in '89, so I was 15. But from the age of 4, I was going to live football with my dad. All my family are footballers, and I'm from a big family, so I'm just about the only person in a big family who's not received money to play football. So watching my dad at Northwich Victoria or Hyde United, that was like my Maracana or my Bernabeu. When you're 6 years old and you're basically being taken to give your mum a break on a Saturday afternoon, and me and my brother, who also became a footballer, we'd be climbing these stands and looking for streams behind the stands, but we wouldn't actually be watching the game itself. We'd be bored after 5 minutes. And then when I was 13, I started going to Manchester United games by myself. My dad wouldn't take me because he was always playing, and I could hear Old Trafford from where I lived on the border of Stretford and Urmston. I used to deliver newspapers, and I'd be out in the open, and I could hear the roar of Old Trafford. It was that loud. I don't think you could hear that now, because the stadium's much more enclosed. And I was always a United fan. I was from a big United family in a part of Manchester which is mainly United. So the Manchester City Supporters Club in my part of Manchester is called Blues in Bandit Country. And they're proper good football supporters. They followed City all their lives, but they are in the minority. So as soon as I was able to go, I'd get on the bus to Old Trafford, and the bus was packed with local kids, and it's empty now. It's really sad, that. And within 2 years, I was going to away matches, and I started United We Stand because I felt that football fans were getting a rough deal. I thought the prices were too high, the facilities were terrible, we were all classed as hooligans. I thought, I'm not a hooligan. And then by 17, I was going to European away games, and it never really stopped. I love the travel. I love being there. And all these years later, I think I've been to like 120 countries and seen Manchester United play in like 45 of them. It's not just new countries, it's new towns. It itched me for years that I'd never been to Cork, so I went to Cork for the Liam Miller game. It annoys me that I've not been to the West Coast of Ireland. I've not been to Donegal. I wrote Paddy Creran's book. It's all about Donegal. I've not been there. I've not been to Derry. These things annoy me. So maybe there's a bit of a, I wouldn't say an addiction, because I think I'm pretty sensible and rational, but you know, the idea of watching sport in any of these places absolutely appeals to me.
Yeah, your first one here, you got to cross Rotterdam off your list way back in 1991. This is a huge moment for Alex Ferguson's reputation and power, and just a sense of like, okay, there's something really, really special brewing here, even though they have yet to get the monkey fully off their backs. This is Mark Hughes against Barcelona in Rotterdam in 1991, European Cup Winners' Cup final.
Huge deal. And Manchester United had a relatively easy run to the final. English clubs were allowed back into Europe for the first time after the ban following the Heysel disaster. And finally in Rotterdam against Barcelona, wow, managed by Johan Cruyff. I've never been so happy to get a ticket in my hand as that beautiful green counterfoil for that game, because there was so many conflicting rumours. This was before the internet, so there was so much hearsay around. Fans wouldn't be allowed to travel, wouldn't be. You'd have to go officially, you'd have to go on the club coaches. So I booked to go independently on a coach which was advertised as an executive one, and maybe when that coach was built in 1954 it was executive, but by 1991 not having a toilet on a coach to Holland was a bit of an issue. And there were a lot of very rum lads on that coach from Salford, and I was 17 and they really looked after me. We went to Amsterdam and they basically said, don't go there, and they indulged heavily, and I was just like, wow, there's another big world out there. And it rained. Manchester was an exciting place. The music scene was good. The Manchester era, the fashion with the flares, just a great time to be alive. But in my school, they banned us from going. So I got a mate of mine who helped with United We Stand to forge a letter from the mayor of Rotterdam saying I'd been invited. I gave it to my headmaster and he congratulated me and said how proud he was of me. And 11 other lads from my school went to Rotterdam. They all got suspended. I got congratulated.
And did you feel any guilt when he was like, Andy, this is incredible, well done. We never thought you were going to amount to very much, but well done. Were you like, mildly guilty?
I rang my mum from Dover on the way home, and she was crying. She said, you've been made head boy of the school.
Wow.
Just had a phone call. And a year earlier, I'd had to persuade the headmaster to let me do my A-levels because I'd messed up in my GCSEs, because he said, you've got something else on your mind. And of course, I had a print run. I had United We Stand to sell the following morning. I had a business to run. I was 16 years old. So, yeah, it was. I went back and that month was brilliant. I passed my driving test that month. But Rotterdam in the rain, everyone's singing "Sit Down" by James, and then Manchester United won the game. Barca were favourites. It was the first year of the Dream Team, and they just won the Spanish League for the first time in several years. And subsequently, I've got to know quite a few of the lads who played, obviously from the United side, but also from the Barcelona side. And it was a really tight game. Manchester United wore a wonderful white kit. And there were some worries in that team, Ince and Robson and young Lee Sharp. But Mark Hughes scored both goals, and he scored them in the space of about 7 minutes in the second half, I think 67th minute. And suddenly Manchester United are beating Barcelona 2-0, and wow, we've not just come for a trip here, we could actually win a trophy. And it was a huge deal, the Cup Winners' Cup. All the European Cups were, and I think they still should be. And Barca got an equaliser, pulled a goal back, so it was 2-1, and it was really nervy the last few minutes because Barca attacked, and technically they had better players than Manchester United, but they held on, and it was fantastic. And it's still a major milestone in the life of a lot of Manchester United fans. And 30 years on, I managed to track down the referee, the travel organiser, the players, and just got told some incredible stories. Mick Hucknall gate crashed the after game party And Brian McClare, a bright man who's really into his music, he said to Mick, I'm not really into your stuff, and I think you've peaked as an artist. In the following year, Stars by Simply Red was the best-selling album in the United Kingdom, and for 2 years on the bounce. And Brian McClare said Mick had the good grace not to pull him up on that, but just the fans behaving, the event passing without much trouble was news in itself, because English football fans had a terrible reputation, not without reason. So to go there, it helped that Manchester United won. It probably helped that it rained as well, and maybe it helped that some of the Manchester United fans had indulged in whatever Amsterdam had to offer. There was very little aggression, and Barcelona fans were pretty straight, and they'd seen the team lose, and they were outnumbered by Manchester United fans. It also taught me the power of exaggeration from football fans. The numbers in Rotterdam have gone up by the year, and I think all fans do this. And I remember being a real anorak for figures and thinking there's 24,000 Manchester United fans here, and I'm properly doing my sums, getting all the hard information, and it just goes up every year. I'm sure any Celtic fans who went to Seville against Porto will be able to relate to this. You're soon into six figures, and not soon after that you're into seven figures, and 500,000 and 1 million fans have gone there. And as soon as you contest it, you're like, no, there are at least 500,000 of us there. There wasn't. So I think all football fans are drawn to doing that, but it was a huge Manchester United following which crossed the channel.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Even one of those Mark Hughes goals where he rounds the keeper and smashes it out. I think even, was it Sergio Busquets' dad was the goalkeeper for Barcelona that night?
It was Carlos Busquets. He was Barcelona's reserve goalkeeper, and was a bit of a character in the Barcelona dressing room. One of the players said, if somebody stole your car radio, you would go to Carlos Busquets to get it back. He was a man from the barrio. And Barca were missing a couple of players, and maybe their full strength team would have beaten Manchester United, but they didn't. And
that's the glory of it.
When Barca fans tell me about their other victories, I sort of say, yeah, but what about Rotterdam? They go, never mind Rotterdam.
The next one is Roy Keane versus Juventus in Turin in 1999. It's hard, I think, now for people to understand the level of tension that there would have been at that stage of the competition, given that the Holy Grail was the Champions League as it was the European Cup, and Ferguson had made no secret of this. And they'd been in it loads at that stage, and there wasn't a guarantee that they were going to win it or that they were going to fulfill the destiny of him being one of the greatest managers in the history of the game. That there would have been this kind of nagging doubt about his ability and the team's ability if they hadn't been able to get over the line, and they're on the verge of going out. I think maybe people, like, when you watch the game back knowing what happens at the end without the actual competitive tension on the day, everything is kind of, there's just an edge taken off everything, but it was so edgy.
Juventus were the best team in the world, in my opinion, had dominated at Old Trafford and were clear favourites to go through. The second leg was in Delle Alpi, which had been built for the 1990 World Cup finals. And I travelled there with all my mates, as we did. We went home and away with Manchester United, and people have got a bit of a downer on Turin as a city. I actually really, really rate it, but we didn't go there to look at the architecture. We went to watch a game of football, and the idea of Manchester United reaching a European Cup final was enough for me, because, as you say, the team had been getting closer. There'd been some near misses, Dortmund in 97, Monaco in 98. It was clearly a very, very good team. But it would take Roy Keane to get that team through. So Juventus were 2-0 up, 2 goals from Inzaghi inside 11 minutes. So they're now leading 3-1 on aggregate, and they're at home. And because of a mix-up with a ticket, I found myself sat in the main stand, not in the press box. And I can't understand Italian, but they knew I wasn't Italian. And the people were just gesticulating to me as if to say, hard luck, we're brilliant, we're Juventus. They weren't being nasty. And they were brilliant. But then Keane had other ideas and scored after 24 minutes, and then Dwight York scored again after 34 minutes. So at half time, I don't think I've ever felt like this watching a game of football in my life, including the final. I just thought, my local team have gone toe-to-toe with Juventus, and they're the better team, and we're going through it because it was away goals. And I went downstairs to get something to eat because I was starving, and there was nothing for sale apart from these coffees, which had like 2 millilitres of coffee in them. And so the second half started. I was really envious that I wasn't with my friends on the other side of the stadium. Andy Cole made it 3-2. Manchester United were going to a European Cup final, and that was enough for me. Not even winning the final, just reaching a final. And I was completely elated, and the same Italians that had been sympathetic to me were pretty gracious, actually, and were saying, this is an incredible team, incredible. And I got lulled into a false sense of security there, because these were very middle-class Juventus fans, and I thought, oh, they all must be really nice people. Left the ground, went round behind the home end to try and get towards my mates in the away end. Asked the steward directions. Someone heard my English voice. I heard the word inglese, and the next minute I was getting attacked. And this guy, I was basically where all the ultras were, and this man just flew at me and kicked me in the top of my thigh. And I said to the steward who was still there, Torino, as if, I mean, there's no logic to this. I'm trying to tell him that I'm Turin, but Torino are their rivals, aren't they? And this steward said to me in Italian, which I understood perfectly despite not speaking a word of it, don't care who you're saying you are, get out of here now, it's not safe for you. So I ran away on the big ramp towards where our hire car was. Gave up on the idea of seeing my friends in the away end. They were all celebrating, 4,500 Manchester United fans. And it seemed like a long time before they came back. It probably was an hour. They came back to the car and we were hugging. We were going to Barcelona to watch Manchester United in a European Cup final. And then we drove to Genoa where we were staying. We got cheap flights because the cheap flights had started to flourish around that time. And I stepped out the car in Genoa, so it's probably 2 a.m. now, and just collapsed. You know, the adrenaline had carried me through, but I'd actually had a pretty bad kick to my leg, and my leg wouldn't stand, and I just fell on the floor. And it was all right. It was nothing serious, just badly bruised. So it was the best performance I think I've ever seen. I've spoke to Roy Keane about this, and he's just gone, I did all right. He didn't. I did all right. Spoke to Nicky Butt about it, and he said, you know, Roy's role's been overplayed by people like you. And I'm like, no. Spoke to Jesper Blomqvist about it, who said, Roy, because Roy was sent, Roy's yellow card would meant that he missed the final, and Roy went mad at Jesper Blomqvist because Jesper passed him the ball, which led to the yellow card, and Roy didn't speak to him for 7 weeks after. I once told Roy Keane this, and he went, really? He didn't know where. He went, hell of a player, Jesper. He was really nice when he was talking about Jesper, and Jesper said it wasn't even a bad pass. I did nothing wrong, and suddenly I've got my captain blanking me. So maybe that shows what Roy Keane was like. But Andy Cole and Dwight York were incredible that night. It was just a wonderful night to go to the best team in the world and to win 3-2.
The Nicky Butt point, right? Because we rewatched this and did a show on it during COVID, and you can't tell how good the performance that Keane has from now, really, because they were going out against a team who had, as you say, were really essentially the best team in Europe, who had flukily lost the previous season, who had peak Zidane, who had Deschamps, who's already just captained France to win the World Cup. As you say, Inzaghi, does Del Piero come off the bench or does he start? They had Edgar Davids in the sides. They were so glamorous, and Manchester United had so often just failed. They just failed to do what we thought they were capable of doing in the competition at this stage, and it looked like 2-0 down that it was going to happen. But there's a magic about what Keane does over the next while, which is calmness in the maelstrom, and then also bring the fire at the same time, and gets them back in the game too, obviously, with like an untypical header. But from this distance, when you watch the game, you're like, oh, why does everybody rave about this so much? It's because the context is kind of stripped away when you watch it now on YouTube.
Yeah, and that Juventus team, as you said, all them players did play. Montero came off the bench. Some of the lads said he was the hardest man they'd played against. Carlo Ancelotti was obviously the manager. They were hardened and effective. I saw them completely destroy Manchester United in '96, even though it was only 1-0 and Alan Boksic a header. They were clear favourites. But, if I look back at the Manchester United players now in that team, Schmeichel, Neville, Owen, Johnson, Stam, Beckham, Buck, Cole, Blomqvist, Queen, York, Scholes on the bench, Sheringham on the bench, Solskjaer on the bench. Not a bad side either.
No, a very, very good side. Next up, it's Rivaldo for Barcelona against Valencia in 2001. Is this the end of the season hat-trick?
Yeah, so since 2001, I've divided my time between Manchester and Barcelona. And I'd been in Barcelona a month and got a ticket for the game, not as a journalist. So the following season, I started going to Barcelona as a journalist, and I got a ticket for this match. And Barca were having a terrible season, and they were up against Valencia, and Valencia were above them in the league, and Barcelona needed to beat Valencia to get into European football. And Rivaldo scored a hat-trick, and it wasn't just a hat-trick. I think all 3 goals were from outside the area. I mean, any one of them would have been a contender for goal of the season, but there was 3 of them. And Valencia were a top side. This is a Valencia of the period who'd reached 2 Champions League finals, who would win a double under Rafa Benitez, who were full of absolute household names. I could name more Valencia players from that team than the current team. And I was in Camp Nou on the second tier. I'm not a Barca fan, and I'm feeling the stadium wobbling. It hadn't even wobbled when Man United beat Bayern Munich there. It probably had done, but I just didn't feel it. So maybe because I was dispassionate, and the way that the goals were scored, and the fact that there was a tangible prize at the end of it of European football, I remember thinking that's the best hat-trick I've ever seen. And it wasn't just a hat-trick, it was really meant something. They needed to win the game against a very, very good team to play in European football. And for Barca to be playing in Europe was unheard of, but it was such a troubled time at the club. They went through a couple of club presidents. I remember one of them, Joan Gaspar, going out to Face the Music, and it was just pure theatre, like 80,000 people waving a white hanky at him, going, go, 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 demission. And it was a completely different type of fandom to one I've been used to in England watching Manchester United. It was totally different types of people, and the age of most Barca fans was much older. But then Rivaldo, because they still had some of these spectacular individuals, and always have had, sometimes they didn't gel, and they hadn't gelled that season. He scored the goals, and it was just a real wow moment. I've never forgotten it, and I'm sure you would have enjoyed it watching it on TV, but just to be there,
yeah,
and being experienced to, wow, everyone's eating peanuts around me. Well, I've never seen this before. Them little nuts you crack open. To be moving with the stand, and to be in Camp Nou, which I've become blasé about it because I've been so often, but it is the biggest stadium in Europe. It's the biggest stadium regularly staging live football matches in the world, and this Sunday it will close for a couple of years. So yeah, that was a real wow moment watching that game. And I interviewed Rivaldo a couple of times, and just shows how journalism changed. We did him for the front cover of 442 magazine, and I got told, yeah, you'll spend an afternoon with him. I mean, an afternoon. Now you've got PRs trying to shrink that time down to as little as possible.
15 minutes.
To the point that,
yeah.
You know, I've said to some of them, I can't get a cover piece out of what I've just got off this person. You know, I'm talking major names as well. So this is just crap. And they've gone, yeah, we know. So, well, it's not going on the cover. And we've had to find some compromise where we go back and do more. So to have 4 hours with Rivaldo on the roof of the Princess Sophia Hotel, and I couldn't speak Spanish at the time, or just learning, so I needed a translator, but I just thought that was normal. Trust me, it's not normal.
It's definitely not normal. It's funny as well, the acrobatics of Rivaldo's goals. The third goal, I think, was the overhead kick, and I think he scored but he scored an overhead kick against United in that 99 season in the Nou Camp as well, and he just seems to hang in the air for an impossibly long duration of time.
Yeah, no, the goals were... I'm going to watch him again after this, and I'd advise anyone watching this to do the same. He was the best player in the world for a couple of years, Rivaldo. And when I met him in person, his legs were like bow-legged because he'd suffered from malnutrition as a kid. And he was a really kindly person. And Barca have always had those players. I remember soon after they made a big deal of Saviola. They thought he was going to be the best player ever. And it just didn't work out for him. And Barca weren't very good for large periods. And they became the norm for them just to be one of the best teams in the world.
Yeah. And
when I went to that game, they weren't.
That brings us very nicely to Messi. Of all the things that you could have picked, Andy, you've actually picked him against Manchester United.
This is horrible, this. It's horrible. I mean, you reach the European Cup final. Your team are the champions of England, Europe and the world. So I'd been there in Yokohama in December the previous month. Manchester United, champions of the world. Just sat on the dock of the bay in Yokohama the next morning, listening to Radiohead's new album, watching these Japanese fishermen, thinking, life ain't ever going to get any better than this. But Manchester United reach another Champions League final, and it's in Rome, it's in Olimpico. It's a great place to go. Never forget some of my fellow Manchester United fans. Where do we go in Rome? Where do we go in Rome? It's one of the best cities in the world. Complaining, didn't think it was that good. They ended up in a car park, some of them, on the outskirts of the city. What on earth are you doing? Well, I remember one of them said to me, I won't have a Scooby where to go in Rome. But what? So there were more Barca fans in the centre of Rome than Manchester United fans, because too many of them didn't know where to go, and there was a drinks ban on, and that didn't bother the Catalans as much as the United fans, who obviously needed their first quenching. And there were a couple of events in satellite locations around Rome, and I remember doing Catalan radio and talking up Manchester United, and a couple of people, journalists who I respect, going, "You're going to get destroyed." I'm like, nah. So you go to Rome. And I got my mum a ticket. My mum's an Old Trafford girl and she supports United. She probably goes to a game once a decade. So I got her a ticket. I just thought it would be wonderful for her, paid for her to go out to Rome. And I had to do my work. I'm in the press box then. I'm a journalist. The first 9 minutes were fantastic. I nodded to my Catalan colleagues, told you. Ronaldo, they were all at it. And then Barca scored and absolutely dominated for 81 minutes. And you saw players, world-class players like Patrice Evra and Nemanja Vidic really struggling. And Barca were brilliant. There was a doubt about Andres Iniesta before the game. By this time, I'd interviewed a lot of these guys. I'd interviewed Messi several times. I'd interviewed Messi when he was a reserve team player. I remember a mate of mine who was captain of Barca's reserves who wanted to learn English, and I wanted to improve my Spanish. We became really good mates and still are, saying there's a lad coming through at training from Argentina called Lionel. He played today, just said, I'm telling you as a journalist, keep an eye on him. He said, I absolutely smashed him today just to let him know that he's now a professional and I'm his captain. And that was Messi. And he scored that goal in Rome, a header. I mean, he was just a level above every single Manchester United player. United got the tactics wrong. Carlos Queiroz had felt that Gerard Piqué, who'd been at Manchester United, could be turned, that he wasn't fast enough over the first 2 meters. So I'm getting very specific information by this point as a journalist, which I couldn't really do a lot with before the game, but it was a real privilege to be getting good level stuff. I knew PK as well. I knew him in Manchester, but he'd obviously left and made the right decision. Long gone were the days when he said, can you take me out around Manchester? Because I don't know anyone. So now he's a European Cup winner. And United's midfield didn't turn up. You know, I spoke to all of them since. They would admit that. There's a couple of lines in Fergie's book where he praises the energy of the Barcelona players, which may be revisited in years to come, I don't know. But they deserve to win. I had United fans complaining to me that Barca fans didn't celebrate it as much as they should do, probably because they weren't all in drink. And there's one other observation I made. So I'm gutted. I go back to my hotel, I have like 3 hours sleep, and I've got to get a train out of Roma Termini at 6 a.m. And I got to the train station, and it was full of Manchester United fans. And none of them had a clue what had gone on in the game they'd been at, because there was no information. There was no internet. There was no internet on phones. People's knowledge of the game was so low, I was stunned. But by the end of the train journey to Florence, where there were a lot of cheap flights going back, everyone knew everything about the game. They just traded off each other's opinions. And they were like, Etu's turn was fantastic, wasn't it? I'm like, you didn't know anything about the game apart from the score when I spoke to you a few hours ago.
Yeah.
Now at Camp Nou, there is a Sala Roma, the Rome Lounge. I have to walk through that every Barcelona game I go to for work. It just feels like a punch in the face every single time. I think every football fan will be the same. Every rugby fan, any sports fan, you get to the final and you lose.
Yeah, well,
and Messi was better than Ronaldo.
European finals, particularly. Andy, we've just got time to squeeze in your last one. This is very interesting. Of all of the things in all the world you could have picked, it's a defeat for Manchester City.
You said context earlier on. I'll give you some context. I'm in Cologne. We're Man United, Europa League. COVID is at peak. I watched them beat Copenhagen. I get a message to say you've been rejected for accreditation for the next game against Sevilla. Sevilla are obviously on the way to winning the Europa League. I'm in Cologne for 8 days. It's day 2. And I've been rejected, and I'm really down about life. And people think you've got this dream job. I can barely leave the hotel, and I'm fuming. And I get a call 10 minutes later from a rights holder, a TV station. Will you go to Lisbon for 11 days to cover the Champions League for TV? Good money, direct flights, bang, I'm in Lisbon. Call my wife, is it all right to be away? Because I've got a young family. And I'm in Lisbon. And I'm covering Lyon against Manchester City. So gone from being so despondent to my stars sort of aligning because I play football with the agent of Lyon's manager. Put a call in, what's going on? He runs through every single player for me. The info's come direct from the manager, Rudy Garcia, who I didn't know, but I'd end up knowing really well. So I go into that stadium and I've got to talk about it on TV. I can talk about Manchester City. City are clear favourites. And Lyon play 3 midfielders aged 19, 20 and 20. Right, you're going to get taken apart. And the feedback I'm getting from the manager is, yeah, we know, but we're going to give them a proper go. We are proud of what we've got. And I'm watching it thinking I'm going to have to speak to Guardiola after the game because I'm working for a rights holder. You know, I'm in this really privileged position where when you walk off the pitch, someone from UEFA says, "Who would you like to speak to?" And you're like, "Can I have Guardiola, please? And can I have Kevin De Bruyne?" This you're seen as a journalist how the other half lives, and you've got to look smart. You've got I had to buy a shirt because we're doing it on TV, and Lyon somehow held on. Not to scrape it, they won 3-1, and Cornet, who went to Burnley, put them ahead. So they're leading 1-0 at half time, and then De Bruyne equalised 69 minutes. So everyone's thinking, okay, City are going through the gears now. They absolutely dominated, but Guimaraes was fantastic in the middle, and I'm thinking, why is nobody signing this player? He's just brilliant. But he wasn't even the one who made the headlines. Dembele made them because he scored twice. Dembele was the person I spoke to after the game because he was the headline. Manchester City were going out. And the Manchester United in me is like laughing, but I've also got to be a professional journalist. And I'm laughing because Lyon had 33% of possession. They completed 184 passes. Manchester City completed 640 passes. It should just never have happened. There was one City fan in my hotel with his son who'd sneaked into Lisbon. Lovely guy, properly respected him and his mate. And I spoke to Guardiola after the game, and I have to say he was incredibly magnanimous. I expected an emotional rant. He was very praiseworthy towards Lyon, and my opinion of him, which was extremely high as a footballer and then extremely low when he joined Manchester City, it went up a bit. But it was all about Lyon, and I spoke to the manager, Rudy Garcia, and he said, come and see me in Lyon. So a few months later, I took a train from Manchester to Lyon. He was under a lot of pressure, and I think he appreciated me taking a train. He gave me an incredible interview, and we were talking about Charles de Gaulle and Normandy, and he's like, why are you asking me about the Normandy beaches? I'm like, I'm allowed to ask you what I want. And we got on really well. And sometimes as a journalist, finally, you just spark with somebody. You just do. And I'm interviewing people every day, but I got on really well with Rudy Garcia. And it's a funny old world. A year later, he's going to be manager of Manchester United, and he loses out to Ralph Rangnick. Oof. And we keep in touch throughout. And then a year after that, he becomes a manager of someone called Cristiano Ronaldo. So would any of that have happened if I'd not had the call? If I'd not been rejected for a press pass in Cologne? These sliding doors moments in life, in sport. Guimaraes, whatever happened to him?
A brilliant episode of You Had to Be There. Andy Mitten, thanks so much. That was sensational.
It's so unexpected.
It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
Some breaking football news this morning. Megan Connolly and Megan Walsh are leaving Brighton at the end of the season. Their contracts have not been renewed. We'll bring you details on where they might end up on tomorrow's show. Shane and Johnny Ward are going to bring you Alan Quinlan live from South Africa ahead of Munster's URC final. Shabana Hearn previews the final WSL weekend. David Brady's going to be on the line ahead of the weekend's football, and we'll have more reaction to Manchester United Chelsea as well as plenty more. Right now, we're playing yet with Dan McDonald talking to Joe. Have a terrific Thursday.
Dan McDonald of the Irish Independent is here in studio. So this is the week where Manchester City officially have won the title, where Newcastle have reached Champions League football. It's all just a bit murky. What a strange space, with City more so, I suppose.
Is it?
And the asterisk hanging over them. It is a strange
sorry,
space.
because of the charges. Oh, yeah.
Oh, not in terms of the routine.
Romance. I thought you were on about the romance.
No. Just in terms of how it's been greeted, it has prompted, as I suspected it would, much discussion about the 115 charges hanging over them. So it's 5-6 for City, akin to Liverpool 78-84 and Manchester United 95-01. Albeit the points total of those two are not even close to what City have managed, even if you adjust for the 2 points a win in the Liverpool era. So we're seeing a glorious football, and yet most of Pep Guardiola's comments post-match at the weekend were about not most of his comments, most of the questions were about the charges. So he was talking about how he will certainly stay on as manager next year. He's contracted to 25. He will certainly stay on as manager until next year, or into next year, but he was saying he wants a verdict this afternoon or tomorrow as soon as possible, please. He referred on yesterday to this thing taking maybe 2 years. So he's obviously got some inside information. I mean, the great obvious point to make here is when, we touched on this with Jonathan Wilson on Monday, when the charges were made and City denied them, City's statement talked about irrefutable evidence. And yet, if it's so irrefutable and they're so confident, why they haven't packaged it up nicely and fired it over to the Premier League to say, you've got this unprecedented investigation into our club completely wrong. Here is the irrefutable evidence. Now let's just put this away, because I'm sure the Premier League would like not to have their champions operating with this huge cloud hanging over them as well. And yet City haven't done that. And it's such an unsatisfactory space. I don't even know how to talk about their win anymore. I mean, in any other sport, Saracens or Tour de France, and it is akin to doping of a sort, there'd be a real, well, the handbrake is up here. Hang on, we're not proceeding any further until this thing is sorted out. And yet we're in this limbo whereby for the next 2 years minimum, we don't know how to talk about this team.
Yeah,
it is a mess.
It does seem like there was a month there where maybe focus switched away from it, and then it was more, they beat Madrid, it was like, oh yeah, maybe we should start talking about these charges again. You know, this could be an issue. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like it's. I mean, everyone. Well, you know, people are generally aware how the legal systems work in a lot of places and countries, and you see it here. You know, big storm around the FAI. Oh, what's going to happen? And then just it enters the legal world, and we say this could take years, and it does. And it's almost like it's the hope that with people, you know, people's attention spans are a little bit shorter nowadays, and sort of like that story when it broke was huge about City, and now it's just, oh God, it's like whirring away in the background, like to the point where people are fatigued by it. People just become fatigued by the discussion because there's nothing new to say, even though it's no less important. It's like a Brexit thing or a protocol. It's like, oh, the charges. Yeah, I mean, can we just get on with our lives here?
And very few people, probably realistically us included, have an in-depth understanding of the regulations, Manchester City's ledger book, and the vagaries at play. Nobody can have a strong opinion. We can look at City and how they've gone about their business from afar, and we can look at the UEFA charges, which were time barred, and then in a few instances not enough evidence, but in the main time barred. And let's add that City were fined for a lack of cooperation. So we can look at the big picture and we can decide ourselves which way the wind is blowing. But in terms of understanding the minutiae of these charges, what can anyone say really?
Yeah,
that's a big part of the problem. But nobody likes the smell, and everybody wants it sorted out. And I don't know. Akin to Newcastle, do you have a ticker at all times when City are playing their matches under investigation as they score another goal?
Well, I suppose the question is, like, you know, and like we all, right, like in all aspects of our watching of sport, like you have a conflict with yourself. You know what I mean? Like if you start to strip down any sporting endeavour you have, or a lot of sporting endeavours you have to compromise with something, you know, like we're talking off air about, say, the golf, whatever, at the weekend, and it's like, well, there's a live golfer winning and the Saudi money, and the people have the appetite. I mean, like last year, say, when they moved, like these golfers were all facing questions about human rights abuses and stuff like that, but comes around to Sunday, none of that's coming up, but it lingers. It's there for some people, it's not for others, and we sort of all go, well, yeah, but it's a good tournament, wasn't it? You know, and there's an element of that with City, and to some extent, and this might sound daft, it almost seems irrelevant whether the charges are proven or not, in the sense of a lot of people have just decided to roll with it. What I'm saying is the alternative is like some kind of collective protest take place. You know, people just decide, rivals decide to we're refusing to fulfill fixtures against this rogue team because we don't know what they stand for. When in reality, of course, at various times in the last decade, they've all sided with City at various times when it suited them. It's a bit like today, like there's a story about Newcastle shirt sponsorship today. It would appear, great commercial acumen, they appear to have, a Saudi company appears to have come forward. I mean, how have they done this? You know, clearly the marketing team, you know, they got together, you know, they rang various big businesses in Saudi with a few quid to spend, with a good budget, and they said, listen, maybe we could talk, would you like to come and work with us? And you know, even the coverage of that from people breaking the story is saying it would appear this deal is probably within the remit, just about within the scope of the third party rules. You know, it's like, because of course everyone knows Saudi Arabia is just a hub of independent businesses all existing together underneath one family, that it's all about free enterprise.
I'd say they've managed to negotiate a good deal, Newcastle.
It would appear that they've got a decent deal. Yeah, it would appear to be in line with other deals signed by other clubs in the region. And this is the whole thing. We can look at the City thing, you step back at it, and there's obviously very specific charges about, I mean, and like, again, you know, like manager salaries and very specific things, right? And if they've left themselves open to that, I mean, that's obviously daft that they have, if that's proven. But we like, you step back and you look at the ridiculousness of the whole thing, and you see various people who've dug into this. You know, some of these companies that are appearing as sponsors, what is their origin, what is their background, where do they come from? And it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a bit more than a smell of the whole thing. And again, maybe everything's absolute. There's nothing. Can't cast aspersions on some of these other sponsorship deals that Newcastle will do. Maybe it's all just perfectly normal business.
Well,
but it's playing the game.
For sure. So to Newcastle, Exhibit B in the argument that football regulation is being made a mockery of on a routine basis. I don't know if you heard the News Agents podcast looked into just even the takeover with Adam Clapton this week.
It's one of those stories I must admit it's existed in the background, but I haven't heard the discussion on it.
There's great detail, and it's just an insight into, not just, to be fair, because we hold football to an impossible standard in some respects, not how football works, but just how the world works, which is almost the most dispiriting aspect of the whole thing. So this is about government involvement, UK government involvement in the takeover, which was scuppered initially. But then a key point to jump in on is when Theresa May was Prime Minister. Heady days for us all. 2018, Theresa May and Saudi Arabia negotiated a deal which was, I think, called the British Saudi Arabian Strategic Council. But in effect, this was a $65 billion trade agreement over the course of a decade, with the PIF pledging £30 billion of investment into Britain between 2018 and 2028. 30 billion is no joke. And so, you know, the reporting at the time of the attempted takeover part 2 was that MBS was texting Boris Johnson. Boris, of course, has denied government had any role in the takeover. We did not interfere at all. That is not how we do our business here, said Boris. And so there's been a Freedom of Information Act, and there are emails now between the Foreign Office in the UK and the British Embassy over in Saudi Arabia in 2020, and the emails were to the extent that the Newcastle takeover is the immediate risk to the relationship between Britain and Saudi Arabia. It is the immediate risk. And so, you know, 30 billion is 30 billion, everyone.
Yeah.
Let's just proceed and see what can be done here. And so fast forward, and now the PIF own 80% of Newcastle, and there is 30 billion, much needed 30 billion going into the UK. And, you know, that's not to mention the farce of the situation that I mentioned to Kieran Kelly, who was on from the Newcastle Chronicle last night, whereby on the one hand, the powers that be at Newcastle are saying to the Premier League, you have absolute assurances this is not state controlled. It's not. And the Premier League, with great rigour, accept these assurances. And then in a courtroom in California where Live Golf are saying, you can't look at these documents as part of discovery. The Newcastle chairman, Yasser Al-Rumayyan, by the way, involved in both, you know, he's a sitting member of the Saudi government. We're not talking about normal third parties here. You're infringing on the sovereignty of the state. You know, this is not Dan McDonald you're talking about. This is the Saudi government. So you just you're looking in from afar at the whole thing, and it's just
it's one of those things that, like, you step back from it in a documentary that's made in 10-15 years time, but, like, you know, just, you know, various clips are chopped in and, like, just bald facts there, and it's like, oh yeah, but, like, you know, you're living it at the moment, so it's you sort of like, again, the day-to-day news cycle just cranks on, and there's an element of, oh, why are you banging on about this, you know, what about it, you know, loads of people coming to defend their club's honour, and what about them, and you know, and it just goes round in circles to the point where, you know, you just end up fighting over it.
Yeah.
But it's happened, you know, and once you, like, this was always the thing, like, once you have a team at the top of the Premier League that is being funded in the way that it is, and they've been the dominant team of a decade, well, I mean, that sort of, like, that lays out your standards for ownership, really, and Newcastle can come in and rightly point to that and say, and classic language, what about it? Well, I have a problem with us, but what about them? And there you go. You just sleepwalk along. But, like, where does it all end? Like, I mean, this is the thing. We always have this debate. Like, you always assume that in some way is there a point where everyone just says, well, I've had enough of this? Like, you have something like the Super League storm, right? Which, ironically, again, a lot of these super clubs eventually, came together and bowed to the fan pressure. And pundits were up in arms over it, and everyone was horrified, the threat of, the integrity of football being challenged, or the Premier League being challenged, or, maybe the games wouldn't be they wouldn't be they would be taken off in a different direction. We wouldn't have the traditional ladder that we crave. But with this, I mean, no one's going to get sick of watching football. You know what I mean? What's the people just collectively just turn off and say, well, we've had enough of this. It doesn't matter even in a way anyway, because the Premier League is such a global monster that even if it survived through COVID, it survived through everything. People thought transfer fees might be affected by COVID, and they've gone up. And that is the ultimate exercise in, it just exists in a completely different stratosphere to every other strand of football now.
Yeah, it's all very tricky. And I suspect lots of people in the UK would say, 30 billion, done. They can have Newcastle. You did the right thing.
Oh, yeah. Although, the Tories get wiped out at the next election, but, it doesn't...
Not over Newcastle.
No. But that doesn't matter, and again, what do we do in 3-4 years time? What if Man City and Newcastle are playing the best football, going at it every week? How do we feel about that game?
Well, you've just taken the last question on all of this out of my mouth, and I do suffer from this sense of, you're talking about this all the time, stop talking about it.
Yeah, that's what you get.
I'm annoying myself. A self-imposed almost sense of stop talking about this, but it's just all so outrageous on so many fronts. How has it affected how you feel about watching Premier League football?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if I'm the best person to ask, because that's probably been my feeling towards the Premier League for a while. And again, though, but then I'm a hypocrite. We all are to a point. I watch it and I enjoy it. In the last decade or sort of 5-6 years, Man City have always been my favourite team to watch. I love watching Kevin De Bruyne play, more above any player, I think, and it's brilliant. But to me, I don't have a Premier League club that I sort of support, and I don't care who wins or loses.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.